надо, чтобы ты затестил. Он вообще просаживается. Так, я пока звук выключу. Просаживается он или нет. Потому что битрейт. Я не знаю, какой правильно. У меня стоит сейчас, по-моему, 12 тысяч. Так. У меня сейчас стоит 12 тысяч битрейт. Вот. Для YouTube должно быть норм. Должно быть достаточно. Сейчас проверим. Ты знаешь, как на мой канал зайти? Короче, главный вопрос в чем? Главные два вопроса. Первое. Это качество. Второе. Это просадки по FPS. В смысле дропы сетевые. Типа 12 тысяч битрейта вообще телефон вывозит или не вывозит? Вот в чем вопрос. Проверим. Слушай, по-моему, нормально с телефона работает все. Ну да. Окей. Главный вопрос в том, когда картинка будет меняться не только 10-я секунда, а когда будет меняться картинка, будет ли дропаться сеть. Потому что, сам понимаешь, на статичной ты картинки окей, битрейт вывозит. А вот два вопроса. Это если картинка сыпется или нет. Сейчас мы это немножко проверим. Пока у нас есть время. Мы возьмем за пример POE. Я прям возьму POE и врублю. Сейчас посмотрим. Кстати, то, что чатик не сыпется, это хорошо. Вот, хороший пример. Ща. Давай проверим. Давай посмотрим. Как это не работает звук. Я понял, а как это так? Это режим стримера, что ли? Ну? Нет. Ну так десктоп, подожди, источник звука. Ну-ка, скажи что-то. А-а-а. Ну-ка, ну-ка, ну-ка. Где это у нас? Минуточку. А где в настройках режим стримера-то? А, вот стример мод. Enable стример мод. Угу. Слушай, так все еще проще. Я могу просто себя замутить, и все будет круто. Типа тебя не слышно, меня не слышно, все.
All these rotten raptors were brought down by your...
Just need a moment to catch my breath. Low on mana.
Beware what you ask, nomad. Curiosity is a charming trait until it is not. Curiosity. Information will be volunteered, not coerced. It will create more questions than it answers. When at last their shadow is cast upon the firmament, it will take more than you can possess to bind and silence the screams within your mind.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thank you so much for joining us today as we unveil Path of Exile's 3.13 expansion. This release contains everything you've come to expect from a Path of Exile expansion release. A new challenge league, new skills, new items, metagame rebalances, and an endgame content update which will leave a lasting impact on Path of Exile. Our team have been very hard at work over the last few months, and we've got a lot up our sleeves to share with you today. But before we jump in, we wanted to mention that Twitch drops are enabled for the duration of this live stream. Below the stream, you'll find the instructions to link your Path of Exile account to Twitch so that you're eligible to receive drops. 2020 was certainly a difficult year for development, but it was also one that saw a lot of big things happen with Path of Exile. In late 2019, we held our first ExileCon convention, where we announced several projects, including Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile. Throughout 2020, we developed 4 major expansions: Delirium, Harvest, and Heist, as well as the one we're going to unveil today. We launched on the Epic Games Store and released our Vulkan renderer and a macOS client for Path of Exile. We're really proud of what we achieved last year under difficult conditions and can't wait to continue the journey with you through 2021, where we expect to reveal much more about Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile, as well as 4 releases for Path of Exile, including the one you're about to see. Thanks again for being here with us. It wouldn't be possible without you. In today's livestream, we'll kick things off with a 3.13 announcement trailer, then take a deep dive into exploring the new expansion's content and features. Once the reveals are wrapped up, we'll launch into a live Q&A where community streamer ZiggyD will ask me questions from Twitch chat, so be sure to get your questions ready. Once the Q&A is over, we'll be jumping into an episode of the Baeclast Podcast, where Taki Cat and his crew of Path of Exile veterans will discuss today's reveals. I'm sure you're keen for me to stop talking and start revealing the new content, so let's jump right into the 3.13 trailer. See you on the other side.
What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power. We felt your deeds. Felt their shockwaves ripple through the void. You have our attention. Now you must keep it. Your limits will be tested. Break them. Do what is thought impossible, and the Atlas will follow. Themselves will bear silent witness. How far will you bend before you break?
That's one of my favorite Path of Exile trailers. We've released, like 35 trailers so far over the last decade, and I still get shivers watching each new one. Props to our video guy Eben for great work as usual. So there's a lot to cover based on what we've just seen. Let's get right into it. In 2016, we introduced the Atlas of Worlds, a formal progression system for Path of Exile's endgame maps that culminated in a pinnacle boss fight against the Shaper. Since then, the War for the Atlas and Conquerors of the Atlas expansions have expanded the Atlas system, introduced new endgame bosses, broadened mechanics, added new rewards, and provided more opportunity for mastery of Path of Exile's endgame. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces a new pinnacle boss, a new way to fight many map bosses at the same time, 11 new maps to explore, and new endgame rewards to earn. Just a few map tiers into Echoes of the Atlas, you will begin to encounter an NPC called the Envoy. It seems that when the Elder was sealed, its absence didn't go unnoticed. The Envoy speaks ominously of new visitors to the Atlas. The first such visitor, and the focus of this endgame expansion, is an entity called the Maven. You'll first encounter the Maven in the boss arena of a map, where she will make the boss encounter more difficult and watch as you do your best to defeat it. If you're successful, she'll give you her beacon, which lets you call her to any map in that region so she can watch more fights. After showing her your boss-killing prowess, she will give you an invitation to her own realm, where she has prepared a special challenge. The Maven really wants to push you to your limits and has fabricated copies of the bosses she watched you defeat. This time, however, you'll have to defeat them simultaneously. If you manage to best her challenge, she'll politely ask you to do the whole cycle again, except this time she wants to watch more and tougher fights, and her next challenge will contain 4 bosses, then 5, then 6, and finally 10. If you're persistent and talented, you may even get to fight the Maven herself, in a very difficult boss encounter designed to challenge the strongest and best Path of Exile players. Completing the Maven's challenges offers the opportunity to acquire some very powerful new rewards, including Atlas passive skill points, Craftable Watchstones, and even the Maven's Orb. As you complete the Maven's challenges, you'll earn a new type of passive skill point that can be allocated on a special passive skill tree in that region of the Atlas of Worlds. Each of the Atlas's regions has its own passive tree, and they generally have around 20 nodes to choose from. You can earn up to a total of 10 skill points per Atlas region. Let's check out some of the Atlas passive choices in the Glennick Cairns region. This branch allows you to focus on Beyond, increasing the amount of experience granted by Beyond monsters, but also allowing you to spawn more Beyond monsters really easily. The Torn Veil notable will drastically increase the quantity of Beyond demons you can encounter. The Legion branch has a notable passive which increases the amount of time you have to break enemies out, and makes it easier to break them out. It's an example of a skill that you could invest into while you're weak, and then remove it later once you're more powerful. And yes, as I implied here, there is an orb that lets you refund Atlas passives. The Incursion branch allows you to more easily get higher tier rooms in the Temple of Atsuatl, and helps you make a definitive decision on whether to swap specific rooms. On the Ambush branch, the tamper-proof notable passive upgrades all strongboxes to be rare and corrupted. This synergizes incredibly well with the Ambush Zana mod or prophecies like Monstrous Treasure. While it prevents you from re-rolling valuable types of strongboxes, the sheer number of corrupted 6-socket and 6-link items will certainly be tempting. Now let's have a look at the Atlas passive choices available in the Lex Proxima region. The Harvest branch can increase your chances of finding a sacred grove, increase its crafting rewards, and make it more likely that you'll encounter a Shabi. We'll explain later in the presentation about how Harvest is being integrated into the core game in this expansion. The Torment branch can increase item drops from possessed and touched monsters, as well as populating the area with some already possessed monsters. These synergize quite well with the Sextants that guarantee a certain amount of rewards from possessed monsters. The Delve branch can increase your Sulfite gains, grant more Master Favor, and grant more Nico Master missions. The Sulfite Infusion notable passive grants Sulfite for defeating map bosses, regardless of whether the area has Nico present. This means that you'll be constantly gaining Sulfite for every map you do in a region, which is a great strategy if you're not already using Sulfite Scarabs aggressively. There are also Breach passives, which increase your chances of encountering a breach and ramp up the difficulty and rewards of your breaches. Naturally, new endgame content means new endgame rewards. Watchstones are an endgame item that can be placed in the Atlas of Worlds to upgrade a region's map tiers and add new base maps to that region. There are two types of existing watchstones: quest item ones that can upgrade a region and can't be traded between players, and unique ivory watchstones that provide special bonuses and can be traded. These unique ones are consumed after a number of maps are run. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces 3 new types of craftable watchstones: titanium, chromium, and platinum. Like regular watchstones, these never expire, but unlike regular watchstones, they can be traded and crafted. They are found quite late in your progression through the Atlas. The eventual goal is that you replace all of your base quest item watchstones with new craftable ones over time as you upgrade your Atlas. Each of these 3 types of new watchstone has its own special mod pool, but there's also a shared mod pool that they all draw from. Like flasks, they can only be normal or magic. You can't find or craft rare watchstones. Because you can have up to 4 watchstones socketed in a region, up to 8 mods can affect that region, and some quite large bonuses to specific content can be stacked. When combined with the Atlas passive trees, these really allow you to optimize what content you encounter and the rewards from that content. The Maven's Orb is an endgame crafting currency item that can only drop from the Maven herself. It allows you to craft influence modifiers when 2 or more are present on an item by removing one modifier and upgrading another. When upgrading an influence modifier of the current highest tier, it upgrades to a new elevated tier that can have additional properties. This foul regalia has 2 Crusader influence modifiers on it, the percentage increased intelligence one and the physical damage taken as lightning damage one. When we apply a Maven's Orb to it, it randomly removes one of these mods and upgrades the other one to become an elevated influence mod. In this case, it upgraded the increased intelligence mod to also have +1 to the level of socketed intelligence gems. The other influence mod was removed. This opens up a mod slot, of course, so it's now possible to add another mod to it. Let's YOLO exalt it for good measure. Maven's Orb crafting is only going to be performed by the upper echelons of elite players, and pushes the boundaries of the best items that are possible in Path of Exile. One of the things that players look forward to in an endgame Path of Exile expansion is new maps to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we have added 11 new types of maps to the Atlas of Worlds, covering a wide variety of environments. And of course, each comes with its own challenging boss fight. Let's have a look at 4 of these new tile sets. One of the reasons why these new maps look so good is that the environment art tile set and level design teams working on them have been doing so much work on Path of Exile 2 recently. And it's not just the 4 maps that we showed you here, there are 7 other new maps with their own bosses to discover in-game in this expansion. Whenever we release a new quarterly Path of Exile update, we start a new challenge league. These are essentially a fresh server to play on for that expansion launch, where players explore the new league mechanics, rush to conquer the new economy, race to level 100, and try to get the best items before their friends. The Challenge League being released alongside Echoes of the Atlas is the Ritual League. In the Ritual League, you'll discover several mysterious altars in each area you explore. Slay the monsters at the ritual site and then activate the altar to initiate the ritual. When it begins, you'll be enclosed within the ritual circle and will have to face off against both the onslaught of monsters you've just slain and also the specific powers of that altar. Each subsequent ritual in the area will summon all the monsters from the previous ones, so the difficulty and reward ramp up as you challenge yourself with each successive ritual. Monsters you kill after you have activated a ritual grant you points called Tribute. At the end of each ritual, you'll have an opportunity to spend this tribute on various reward items. These items vary greatly in power and cost, so you may find you can afford several cheaper ones or one more valuable one. For clarity, tribute doesn't transfer between game areas. As you complete subsequent rituals in the same area, more potential rewards will be revealed, which can be very expensive. If you can't afford to purchase a reward outright, you can spend a portion of its cost to defer it until later. This means that it will show up in a later area at a reduced price. Items can be deferred multiple times until you can eventually afford them, and for some of the most valuable rewards in this league, this may be the easiest way to obtain them. You can also spend some tribute to re-roll the contents of the reward screen one time per instance if you'd like a new set of reward items to choose from. Among the many other rewards you can choose from in Ritual are a special new set of Ritual base types. These are craftable items that have different implicit modifiers than Path of Exile's regular base types. Specifically, they have a strong upside combined with an accompanying downside. If you can create a build that mitigates this drawback, then you can take advantage of the power of these items and craft them into something amazing. For example, these Nexus gloves reduce your maximum mana but have a chance of immediately refunding the mana spent to use a skill. If you can work around this restriction to your mana pool, you can periodically use skills for essentially no mana cost. Here are two other examples of Ritual base types, the Penitent Mask and the Stormrider Boots. The Penitent Mask applies the Crush debuff to you, removing your physical damage protection. However, its upside is that it increases the effect of Fortify on you by quite a lot, reducing the damage you take from hits. There are many situations where this is a huge win, such as if you already have no armor or endurance charges. The Stormrider Boots reduce your accuracy rating but provide a huge added lightning damage boost to your attacks based on your accuracy rating. If you have other sources of accuracy to rely on, then this is potentially a huge increase to the lightning damage you deal. In the endgame, you can obtain Ritual Vessels, which allow you to itemize the monsters from a ritual. You can place up to 4 vessels in the map device alongside a map to add the monsters stored in those vessels to the rituals present in the map. This increases both the difficulty and rewards of the rituals, as well as generating even more tribute to spend on those rewards. For example, because there's a chance of encountering a Headhunter or Mirror of Calandra as rewards, using Ritual Vessels increases the chances you'll be offered those items and allows you to afford them. In addition, you can use these vessels to substantially increase monster density in maxed out maps that have mechanics like Beyond or Delirium present. Using vessels, you have control over the risk and reward of your hardest ritual encounters. Vessels are tradable both before and after they contain monsters. In addition to the new endgame content in the Ritual Challenge League, a large focus of the Echoes of the Atlas expansion is on its Ascendancy classes. Path of Exile has 19 Ascendancy classes, which let you specialize your character further than the base character classes allow. To unlock your Ascendancy class, you must find the Altar of Ascendancy at the end of the Lord's Labyrinth. In this expansion, we've rebalanced every one of these 19 classes and have significantly reworked 3 of them, the Elementalist, the Inquisitor, and the Deadeye. The aim of these changes is to redistribute and simplify power so that Ascendancy passive skills perform stronger single functions more effectively. Let's check some of them out. The Elementalist has always been a good general Ascendancy class for many elemental builds, but lacked really in-depth build options. Now you can pick which elemental ailments to use for greater build customization, as well as providing more consistent power against tougher enemies. The Elementalists can also protect themselves from a large amount of elemental damage. Bastion of Elements provides a significant defensive shield against elemental damage, which can be further improved by allocating more skills on your passive tree and Ascendancy tree. The Liege of the Primordial and Elemental skills focus on Golem builds. Taking Liege of the Primordial now means that your golems are automatically resummoned 4 seconds after they die. To make your golems immune to elemental damage, you'll now need to spec into Elementor as well as Liege of the Primordial. Previously, the Shaper of Desolation skill forced you to improve both Shocking and Chilling, even if you didn't use both. We've now moved these benefits into their own branches, culminating in the Shaper of Flames, Winter, and Storm skills, allowing you to pick which ailments you improve. You can use and enhance Ignite, Chill, and Shock on any build. Mastermind of Discord no longer focuses on Heralds and allows you to strip all elemental resistances from your enemies effectively. Pendulum of Destruction has been reworked as Heart of Destruction, providing more elemental damage or area of effect when you need them most. The Inquisitor has derived much of its power from its Inevitable Judgment skill, but the rest of the tree was fairly straightforward and lacked anything truly unique. After our changes in this expansion, many more of the Inquisitor skills provide significantly more offensive or defensive power, while Instruments of Zeal opens up an entirely new and very unique playstyle. Let's have a look at some of the new Inquisitor Ascendancy skills. Pious Path no longer affects attack and cast speed, and now allows you to double the potential recovery of life regeneration by having it apply equally to Energy Shield. Sanctuary no longer provides mana, but now has a larger damage bonus from Consecrated Ground, up from 10% to 15%. Righteous Providence has been simplified a lot. It still focuses on critical strike chance, but it now scales it up by a percentage equivalent to either your strength or intelligence value, whichever one is lowest. It also provides plus 50 to both of these attributes, which is a huge benefit in multiple ways. You will definitely want lots of both attributes. Instruments of Virtue has been simplified and made more powerful. Its benefits no longer strictly apply if you've cast a spell or attacked recently, but it now grants 10% more attack damage for each non-instant spell you've cast recently, up to a maximum of 30%. It also grants Battle Mage, which causes you to gain added spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon. This provides a lot of new hybrid spellcast and melee build possibilities. You can combine Instruments of Virtue with the new Instruments of Zeal Ascendancy passive. This introduces the concept of fanaticism, which causes spells you cast yourself to have 75% more cast speed, reduced mana cost, and increased area of effect. Fanaticism is gained by using attacks regularly, giving huge bonuses for weaving attacking and spellcasting together. Historically, the Deadeye Ascendancy was the best place to find a variety of strong projectile-based effects, but over time more of these effects have shown up on items, and the Deadeye has lost much of what made it unique. We've brought the uniqueness back to this Ascendancy with a variety of new mechanics that enable new ways to build and play ranges. Let's have a look at the new Deadeye Ascendancy skills. Far Shot now deals 60% more damage to enemies far away from you, which is up from 30% before, but now also deals 20% less damage to enemies that are close. It no longer has a projectile speed bonus, but now removes the spread from your barrages. This additional damage rewards Deadeyes who can keep their distance from their targets. Previously, Ricochet caused your projectiles to chain an additional time and granted 10% more damage for each remaining chain. The new Ricochet allows your projectiles to both chain an additional time and have a chance to chain off walls and terrain. Endless Munitions has been simplified to offer 2 additional projectiles rather than 1 additional projectile and some other minor bonuses. This skill is accessible behind 3 of the Deadeye's paths, making it an option for many different Deadeye builds. Occupying Force is a new skill that benefits Mirage Archers by granting you additional ones and allowing them to be separate from you. Gathering Winds now always grants Tailwind to permanently boost your speed, and the increase to Tailwind effect per skill used is now given by the Gale Force buff. Wind Ward enhances the Gathering Winds passive by making Gale Force a lot more effective, with the drawback of losing all Gale Force if you're hit. If you can stay out of the fray, this potentially makes your character even more potent. The Rupture skill previously helped Critical Strike bleed builds. It's been renamed to Rupturing and has been simplified while being made more powerful. Critical strikes that inflict bleeding now also inflict Rupture, which causes bleeding enemies to lose more life, but their bleed expires more quickly. Focal Point is a new skill which improves the effect of mark skills that were made more powerful in our recent Heist expansion. It increases the effect of your marks by 75% and makes surrounding enemies deal less damage to you. As you have seen, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye have undergone some major changes in this expansion. We have also improved the other 16 Ascendancy classes and will show you some of the changes to the Slayer to demonstrate what you can expect. Some Slayer effects were much stronger than others, limiting build choice. We've now provided more power spread out over a wider selection of passives, while allowing easier access to the Slayer's special leech mechanic. Brutal Fervor and Endless Hunger have switched places on their Ascendancy branch so that Life Leech is more accessible and can be further improved by speccing into Endless Hunger. Masterful Form still causes you to have endurance charges equal to the number of frenzy charges you have, but now grants an additional frenzy charge instead of increasing endurance and frenzy charge duration. Overwhelm's base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons has been increased. Hopefully you now have a good idea of the scope of changes that we have made to the 19 Ascendancy classes. While the biggest changes to the 3 we're heavily revamping, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye, all of the others have received at least numeric attention also. We believe that the new design philosophy for Ascendancy passives makes them easier to understand and that they are a more concentrated source of power. We look forward to revealing the rest of the changes next week. Like with improving Ascendancy classes, adding new skill and support gems to Path of Exile helps create new ways to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we've introduced 2 new gems that provide versatile ways for you to build powerful new characters. These are the Hydrosphere skill gem and the Trinity support gem. First, let's have a look at Hydrosphere. This skill summons a huge sphere of water that you can move around to crush enemies. While it is active, you can apply cold or lightning ailments to it. It will then pulse for a duration, afflicting nearby enemies with damage matching that ailment. This player is applying Freeze to the Hydrosphere with Freezing Pulse, and that causes it to repeatedly damage surrounding enemies with cold damage. Here's the Gem Hover for Hydrosphere. This skill gem can be acquired from level 34 and can be supported with Spell, Area of Effect, Duration, Cold, Orb, Lightning, and Physical support gems. It pulses every 0.4 seconds while an ailment is applied to it. It also converts its physical damage to cold or lightning damage based on what ailments are on it. The Trinity support gem is designed to support builds that deal multiple types of elemental damage. While Trinity supports your skill, any hits that deal damage with a specific element will build resonance with the other two elements. The more resonance you have of every element, the more damage the Trinity support gem provides. When you have high resonance with all three elements, Trinity also grants elemental penetration. Here you can see the player using Ball Lightning with Unleash and Magma Orb to build resonance across all three elements. To power up the Trinity support gem quickly and uniformly, the player alternates between pairs of elemental damage types. Combined with the elemental weakness curse, the maximum resonance Trinity absolutely decimates enemies. In addition to introducing the two entirely new gems we described, we have done an extensive balance pass on other skills. We have buffed over 40 existing gems, including skills such as Scorching Ray, Seismic Trap, Firestorm, Venom Gyre, Static Strike, Kinetic Bolt, Crackling Lance, Lightning Strike, Shrapnel Ballista, and Artillery Ballista. Full details will be available in the patch notes next week so that you can plan your perfect build. As well as introducing and rebalancing skills, another important aspect of keeping the metagame fresh in a Path of Exile expansion is adding new unique items to discover and build characters around. Unlike most items you find in Path of Exile that are randomly generated, unique items are extremely rare ones that our design team have hand-created to offer new build opportunities. Echoes of the Atlas introduces 10 new unique items, some of which are exclusive to its new endgame encounters. Let's have a look at a few. These are some unique worm-scale boots called Legacy of Fury. They place Scorched Ground as you travel, which applies the Scorch ailment to enemies standing in it. When scorched enemies die, they have a chance to set fire to surrounding enemies, dealing a percentage of the slain enemy's life over time. These boots create an interesting and new way to support your build with fire damage. This is a new unique amethyst ring called Black Flame, which is themed around fire and chaos damage. Its headline effect is that your ignites now deal chaos damage, along with a cool new chaos ignited effect on monsters. Also, if you ignite a withered enemy while wearing Black Flame, the wither will no longer expire, and you can build up to its maximum of 15 stacks, if the enemy survives long enough, that is. Along with its various other benefits, this unique ring should ignite a few new ways of playing fire and chaos damage characters. These new Zealot gloves are called Hand of the Fervent and create an interesting interaction between physical damage and the mana cost of skills. The unique ability of these gloves happens whenever you use a skill. They grant an effect called Sacrificial Zeal, which both adds a quarter of the skill's mana cost to spell physical damage, but also hurts you, to the tune of 150% of the skill's mana cost over 4 seconds. They also reduce your enemy's physical damage reduction. When we have time during an expansion's development, we try to identify past leagues that can be integrated into the core game as optional side content, with a few improvements. This expansion contains 2 such leagues. Last year, we released the Harvest League, which allows you to grow a garden of monsters, fight them, and then use their lifeblood to craft your items in powerful ways. Watching this league unfold made us realize 2 things. Firstly, the crafting options were so powerful and so easily accessible that players had unprecedented access to almost everything they wanted very quickly. Secondly, even the players who did enjoy the mechanics of growing their own garden would probably find it boring if that was something they had to do every single league. When deciding how to integrate Harvest into the core game, we knew that we had to curtail crafting somehow, but we didn't want to just do this by nerfing it a lot. We needed a smarter solution that still allowed players to earn and perform powerful crafts. We also knew that we didn't want players to have to grow and manage their own gardens every league. So let's check out how Harvest works as part of the core game in Echoes of the Atlas. In Echoes of the Atlas, as you play through maps, rather than finding a seed cache, you'll now encounter a portal to the Sacred Grove. But it's not your own Sacred Grove, it's an established one that has a full complement of plants ready to harvest, fight, and craft with. The grove contains several pairs of harvests to choose between, each displaying the details of the fight and the corresponding crafting options. You can only pick one of each pair, so carefully choose which crafting options are best for you, defeat the monsters, and use their life force to perform the crafts. If you're strong enough to kill the monsters, each grove represents quite a lot of crafting opportunities, and you can save up to 10 crafts for later use at the Hoarder crafting station, which is now available in your hideout. We like this compromise because it keeps the exciting elements of harvest, fighting and crafting, and drops the part that got old quickly, seed management and garden planning. We're also integrating the Heist League into the core game as optional content, with a few improvements. In Heist, players travel to the Rogue Harbor to hire a crew of thieves to help them plan and execute risky heists, working towards a thief's ultimate goal, pulling off a grand heist. In the Echoes of the Atlas expansion, heist contracts drop from Act 6 onwards. Rogues level up their skills faster from completing heists, markers drop with higher stack sizes, and quest contracts are now dropped for you at the next smuggler's cache as soon as that quest is available. One great aspect of Heist is that all of its progress items are tradable, so if you're focusing on other content, you can trade away your contracts until you're ready to go on some heists. So we've covered most of the big features of Echoes of the Atlas so far. Keep an eye out for the patch notes in a few days where we will detail other changes that didn't make it into this presentation. Soon we'll move on to the Q&A about today's announcements, but first, let's have a quick look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the Echoes of the Atlas expansion and the Ritual Challenge League, and to help fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile. The Faithsworn and Renegade supporter packs come with masses of points to spend in the store, social frames, forum titles and badges, a download of the digital soundtrack, and of course exclusive cosmetic microtransactions such as armor sets and character effects. The Renegade series has an exclusive pet, and the Faithsworn series an exclusive portal effect. Each series has 2 packs, and the smaller packs can be upgraded to their respective larger packs at any time while they are still on sale. These are, of course, in addition to the new core packs that we released a couple of weeks ago. Remember to check those out if you haven't already. Thanks so much for your support. As you know, purchases of these packs are what fund ongoing development of Path of Exile, its expansions, and its sequel. Speaking of Path of Exile 2, we know you're keen for an update. While today is all about Path of Exile and Echoes of the Atlas, we have plenty of Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile mobile updates planned for you this year, which will start sooner than you think. Our team have been creating some amazing stuff and we can't wait to reveal it to you. So, I'm sure you have a bunch of burning questions about Echoes of the Atlas. Stay tuned as we're joined by ZiggyD, who will be hosting a Q&A with me based on your questions from Twitch chat.
to the Q&A segment for today's reveal. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris Wilson.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks very much for hosting. That was a lot of fun, actually.
That was I think since ExileCon, the most dense info reveal that we've had all in one go. I think people are a little bit overwhelmed. I saw a lot of people kind of exploding in chat, saying too much with the heads exploding.
Yeah, it was honestly trying to revive what we were doing at ExileCon with this announcement. We had a lot of fun presenting everything ourselves to the players last year on stage, and we thought, why not try that again? Took a bunch of work to prepare the live stream, of course, but yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because this is quite different to how you normally go about revealing things. So I was trying to recapture that ExileCon magic a little bit, which I think everyone is kind of in need of at the moment. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good distraction away from real world stuff and a good chance to get stuck into some POE in the new year.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into some questions, and this is a live Q&A. So you, of course, post your questions in chat as well. Chris, phone's off, Chris.
Yeah, well, people are just calling me on Discord because they see me on Twitch.
They're excited. They're like, hey, I'm going to call Chris right now. Now's the perfect
You're on the
time to
internet, bro.
Hey, Chris, wow, do you realize you're on the internet? We're going to jump into some pre-made questions, but you, of course, can submit your questions in the chat. We have a team of mods who are pulling questions throughout that we'll answer a little bit later on. First, though, let's start off with Echoes of the Atlas, the new overall major expansion. So this is like the core game content expansion, really endgame focus, with this character, the Maven. So this seems like an expansion to the Cyrus and Conquerors endgame that we have right now, in a similar fashion to how the Elder was an expansion to the Shaper endgame. Is there a similar sort of intertwining of the storylines here, like there was with the Shaper and Elder?
So our goal is that they exist entirely in parallel to each other, right? Like the Maven stuff is there at the same time as all the Cyrus stuff, but story-wise, they're different. It's more of a story expansion to the Elder storyline, actually, because whatever type of entity the Elder was, the Maven is also. And so there's some stuff for players to explore there. And so the Cyrus stuff still exists in parallel. We haven't taken anything away, though we do want to foreshadow that it's very likely that before the release of Path of Exile 2, we'll probably remove or substantially modify the Cyrus storyline as well. We're still evolving the endgame in the direction we wanted to be in for the release of POE 2, but the Maven will probably be around for some time.
I really like this otherworldly stuff that you've been kind of hinting at for years, like these other kind of universes that leak into ours in Path of Exile. So this seems like a further exploration of that, which I'm pretty excited about. But what led to the decision to kind of go that route and continue with like the Elder kind of connected storyline instead of continuing or doing something else with Cyrus's? Or was that just self-contained and felt complete?
The writers have a lot of plan for what they want to do in the future, and it is leading up to, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the story of Path of Exile 2 and what's going on there, but we do have an overarching plan along our franchise, and so it's important for us to drop hints and set things up correctly with Path of Exile 1 in the meantime.
I still remember years and years ago when you said you had like a plan for 10 acts and a decade worth of content and things like that. Well, still going along with that like long arcing plan then.
Stretches out another 10 years now, yep.
Good stuff. It's good to hear. It's good to hear. So how does the Maven's, this is something I wasn't clear on from the thing, how does the Maven's kind of gameplay loop or cycle work in terms of content, how you engage with it? Does the Maven progression occur alongside the Cyrus and Watchstone progression?
Yeah, it's entirely alongside. Like, it's entirely possible to complete all the Maven stuff without yet fighting Cyrus and vice versa. Basically, after you've encountered the Maven for the first time, you can call her to witness map boss kills of yours. And so basically, when you're using the map device in an area, you click the little Maven icon to use her beacon, and then she will be present in the map for the fight. And her presence makes it more difficult, and it means that you've basically captured a copy of that map boss, and it puts an icon next to that map on the atlas. And then from time to time, you get an invitation to her realm, where there's an escalating number of bosses you have to fight simultaneously, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 10 one can be farmed. That's the one there that is a item that you can craft mods onto. And so that's the fight that you basically get to repeat with really good rewards if you're able to kill 10 bosses at once. And so there's kind of two parallel things you're doing there. You're earning the invitations to the realm, and you're also locking bosses in that she's got copies of. And this is on a per region basis. And that progression there is what dictates your passive points that you unlock on those region trees. And so there's 5 sets of 2 points that you receive for completing the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 boss fights, respectively. And then, of course, after completing the 10 fight, you have the opportunity to occasionally potentially challenge the Maven herself.
Okay, I'm guessing that'll be kind of secrets to be revealed from
Yeah, I'm
launch.
sure
The actual
people
Maven
will work
fights.
it out. And this is
Yeah.
all in parallel to the existing Watchstone progression, though of course it's super, super endgame stuff.
Yeah, okay. And you said this in the initial reveal, it said that this kicks in around like a few tiers into the Atlas. You start
Yeah.
capturing the bosses.
That's
and
right.
we don't need nets for that, right?
We took nets out early in development.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm pretty excited about this idea of fighting 10 map bosses at a time. I love boss fights in general. But something interesting we learned from Metamorph and the lab fights version of the Metamorph bosses was that it's often the map mods that actually make bosses difficult,
Yep.
and fighting them outside of that is often a lot easier in comparison. So how will the boss fights here, these Maven boss fights, be scaled in difficulty in the actual Maven's arena?
So as you're playing through them, initially doing 3, then 4, then 5, and so on, those ones there are difficult because there's multiple bosses at the same time. But by the time you need mods in order to make them harder, that's when mods start to kick in on the invitation items that you get for the farmable 10 boss fight. So that one's craftable. And so you definitely want to pump the rewards on that one as much as you can, because that's the place where you're finding a lot of the good in-game rewards from. You're finding, chase uniques, and you're finding craftable watchstones and so on.
Okay, I have a few questions from that. Unexpected ones. You mentioned invitation items, so there's an itemized system here.
So the first invitations that you receive from the Maven to go to her realm and fight some locked-in bosses, they're quest items basically, because there's a strict progression of 3, 4, 5, and so on. The 10 invitation where you get to, that's the farmable one, that one there is a tradable item. And so you're bottlenecked by both having 10 bosses in the can, as it were, and also having the item with the mods that you want. And so because they're tradable, of course, it may be that you want to go and craft or trade for some that are incredibly good, or maybe you find one that's great, but it's too difficult for you, so you just trade it and get chaos to spend on something else.
So they have the bosses on them, on the item, and also mods, it sounds like?
So to be clear about that, you're locking in bosses on your Atlas at any time, and the item is entirely separate. And so you'll, of course, have the item by the time you have the bosses, because they drop at a similar rate, but it's entirely possible that you do have surplus items that you want to trade to other people. And it may be that you're going for just harder bosses, like you want to lock in 10 incredibly difficult and rewarding ones rather than 10 of the easier ones. And so, the two progressions are in parallel with each other.
Yep. Okay. And does the bosses you choose have an impact beyond just difficulty?
I don't actually know the answer to that. Does anyone who's watching over here want to clarify? Yeah, it's just the difficulty. And of course, people will have strategic reasons to fight certain ones.
Right, yeah.
I certainly know from last time I was playing high tier maps, there are bosses I do not want to be fighting simultaneously, so I would not pick those.
Can you put like multiple of the same boss in, like 10 Katavas or something? Or they have to be different?
I mean,
Okay.
The engine supports it. Don't get me wrong. This is a potential for the future, but you're fighting unique ones, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Yeah.
This it's actually the first thing I thought when I saw it was it reminded me of those videos you put out of like bosses fighting each other. Is it kind of inspired by that or something?
Well, it's interesting because when we initially designed all the map boss fights, we made them work in their respective arenas, right? There's various triggers and distances and all that kind of stuff. And we have put so much work into making it so that bosses can work anywhere, so that you could just drop a Katava on the coast, essentially. For this and other things, the ability to have map bosses just occur in any place gives us a lot of extra content in the game. And so that's being tried out in the Maven's arena here. And it's funny, honestly, so much of the work on the expansion was genericizing the map boss fights without making the fights any less awesome.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I imagine it was difficult to get things like Katava and stuff that were very locked in place, working in different arenas. I'm afraid that we're going to see things like Katava starts dragging himself around by the arms or something like that, terrifying like that.
Well, wait and see.
Okay. So in terms of the Atlas here, it seems like a pretty substantial step up in complexity with craftable watchstones and the Atlas passive trees, which look pretty insane, alongside the current watchstone progression systems, which a lot of people feel already it's a pretty complex system for a lot of people, I think. How do you think the average or newer players are going to handle? How do they handle the current Atlas, firstly, and how do you think they'll handle this?
It's pretty endgame, and that means you have a pretty good understanding by the time you get to it. It's also introduced at a rate that's relatively manageable. You get it in pieces, and it's kind of optional as well. Like putting watchstones in, sure, it's complicated if you want to roll the best ones, but you're unlocking these over quite a period of time. Like they are valuable, they are endgame rewards. You do need to get them one at a time, and you have control over what the mods are. And so it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes there, because it's just going to mean you get worse rewards for your content. And so we don't think it's going to hamper anyone's enjoyment of the game if they're not maximizing the system. But of course, as they learn more about it, they will certainly benefit. And as you know, with a free-to-play game, many players who play it don't quite get through to red tier maps, and we're okay with that, but those who do will certainly have a lot of stuff here that they can play.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah, unlike regular Watchstones, it doesn't stop you from progressing so much as just give you extra reward engaging with the system well. So it seems like there's actually quite a lot of extra reward here. The passive trees in collaboration with these new craftable watchstones, from what I saw of those passive trees, there's a lot of stuff like guaranteeing generals and legions and stuff like that that are juicing up the rewards quite a bit. How how much more rewarding do you feel the Atlas is going to be? And I guess you guys are comfortable with how much extra we're going to be getting?
Well, part of it is that for a while, players have complained. A word they often use disparagingly is clutter, that the end game has a lot of alternate systems that you can choose between. And while we philosophically believe that it's great for there to be a choice of content for people to play, and they should play whatever content they enjoy the most and are best at, we want to allow them to double down on content. We want them to be able to say, I like this, I want to see it more often, and I want to see it be more rewarding. And that way, you customize what you want to be playing, and then you play that, and you get good rewards for it. And that enables you to trade those rewards to people who did other stuff. So, for example, if you just hate Incursion, you never want to touch a temple in your life, but you want double corrupted items, you just do Heist or Harvest or whatever it is that you enjoy a lot, and trade those items for the double corrupted ones. And so both the Watchstones and the Atlas passives here allow you to influence content that you're encountering, make it more rewarding, and basically specialize, while still making sure that there's a broad base of Path of Exile content for you to experience if you do want to try something new.
I have always really liked the idea of us being able to really specialize in certain pieces of content. And we've seen, I think, a progression towards more and more of that, which is pretty interesting to see. It almost seems like a step towards giving us the ability to choose which of these things, like you mentioned, people saying that there's a bit too much clutter. There's like the option to effectively choose now which ones you actually care about.
We've certainly discussed ideas of reducing the base rate and having this stuff amp it up. And, you know, that's a change we might even see before release, potentially, depending on how balancing goes. But we do want content to be available that you encounter occasionally. Even if you've chosen to specialize in other things, it's nice to occasionally run into it, to have an opportunity to try it. That's the only way a player is going to work out that they actually can do that content and that they do like it. And so, you know, there's plenty of time in the future to tweak this in future expansions, but it's likely that we are not just going to turn content outright off and hide it away.
It's almost like they're little demos to tempt you into maybe trying to specialize in those and see how you go. It's like, oh, I keep seeing these Legion things. I wonder what it would be like if I specialize in those.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. How hard is it to respect these Atlas passive trees? Are they something we're adjusting really often or leaving intact most of the time?
So there is a currency that lets you refund it, and that currency, of course, has a value. I mean, how long is a piece of string, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do this super easily, but wealthy endgame players can absolutely, you know, respec as much as they need to. It's just going to cost them, and there's going to be an opportunity cost to that. Now, there are strategies, of course, where you may want to respec these aggressively. You might work out that the best way of getting currency is to actively manage what Atlas passives you've chosen. And to do so, of course, that's going to burn a bunch of currency achieving that, and players will work out the right amount to do that's still profitable for themselves.
Yeah, I imagine this is like something when people are doing the like fully juiced content where they're stacking sextants and everything else to get specific content. It might be something they adjust to synergize with those things once they like get the stars to align for.
Exactly. And honestly, because this, like most things in Path of Exile, is a market-driven thing, it means that if there's little need to respec, then the respec orbs will inevitably be very cheap, and that means you can respec easily and there's no problem. And if it's just insanely profitable to respec dynamically, then people will do that and it will make it expensive, and we'll just have to have a look at the effects of this and rebalance it later on if needed.
Okay, so the reveal kind of slipped something in there that people might have missed. You mentioned that the Maven is the first. So is this planned as an expandable system with more people like the Maven, more
So you're
creatures like the
referring to
Maven?
the Eldritch entities that have noticed that the Elder is missing. Maybe we'll see more in future expansions. Who knows? I mean, you know, we've got many decades of lifespan left to spend on this project, so we have to come up with some more entities at some point.
I'm a sucker for things like that where you're like hinting at the fact that there's like an expanded kind of lore universe here that's going to draw from. I thought I'd ask. I figured it would be a maybe answer though.
Yeah.
Let's move on to ritual. So the ritual sites, it says that we pull monsters to them or that we kill monsters in the area. Are we intended to pull monsters to these ritual sites, and do we pull bosses to them?
Right, so you definitely don't need to and should not pull a monster to the site. And we did this on purpose because if it counts the monsters that are nearby, and if there was a benefit for pulling monsters there, then the correct behavior is to grab half the map and drag it to a ritual, and that's not fun. So the way it works is when a ritual spawns, it's near some monsters organically because it's biased towards monsters, and it has a bunch of extra monsters on it. And so those monsters that are near it, you do have to clear before you start the ritual, but there's no need to pull extra monsters in. It literally does nothing. So you clear the ritual by killing all the monsters nearby, and it'll be a decent fight. And then you tag the ritual altar, and that resummons all the monsters in a staggered formation as you're fighting against the effects of the altar. And we didn't make it super clear in the video, but there are lots of different types of altars with lots of like arena-based combat that you get to do there. It's not really like an Orion mission where it's slow-paced. This is something that's really throwing monsters in your face. It's meant to be a fast-paced, bite-sized combat encounter. And then each of the subsequent ones that you do has all those monsters and more. And so because they ramp up in difficulty and reward, we totally expect weaker players to like call it and not do the last rituals in the area if it's just getting too hard for them. And so it's meant to be a thing where you do as many as you feel you can handle, which I get it for most people that have, made an effort to watch this stream probably means all of them because they're good at the game. But you never know, it might get pretty hard for you.
And just trying to flatter the crowd. You're also
It is
good
true
at
that the top 10% of players are the ones that are watching right now. They're making an effort to talk about the game.
Fair. So there's a bunch of items in this store once you like finish the ritual that you can purchase using as ritual points. Do the rares in there use the new high quality rare generation system that we saw a taster of in Heist?
Some of them do. There are basically different categories of things that can appear in the favor rewards. Favors are what we're calling the items you buy with tribute. And so some of them are templates that generate high quality rares where it biases the mods, and some of them are not. It really depends what we're trying to achieve with that particular slot. And we've tried to have a lot of variety in there. So yeah, occasionally you'll find exceptionally good stuff, and occasionally you'll find stuff that's there for another reason, potentially because it's got like let's say it's got influence on it. It probably doesn't need to have insanely good mods at the same time, because what we're trying to achieve there is giving you an influence rare rather than particularly good rare.
Okay, so we'll kind of notice like themes for the items that they're like built around then.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you complete a ritual, there's this ritual item store, and it like reveals a bunch of items for the first ritual of that map, and there's multiple rituals per map. Do the later rituals in the same map add more items to that same stock, or are they a new stock of items each time?
So the way it works is that the items are in the first window and some of them are hidden. So those ones, if you check back at the footage, have like a little icon over them. It's shrouded. It was initially the present wrapping thing that we use occasionally and stuff, but that looked real weird for it to be a bunch of birthday presents basically in the window. So the unrevealed items are there, and the reason why is so that you don't just cycle doing the first ritual in each area repeatedly until you find one with good rewards. The incentive is that you actually play through the rituals to get to the more advanced items, and the ones that are hidden from you are the more expensive ones, the ones that cost more tribute. Now, obviously, the best strategy is probably to do all the rituals first before deciding what to buy. That's fully intentional, right? It's not gaming the system to save your money until you can make a fully informed choice. But the reason that we show them early is because there's no reason not to allow people to go shopping with their tribute if they do see something they like. Like if you're looking for a Chaos Orb and you can afford a Chaos Orb after a couple of rituals, just buy it if you want it. I mean, you could wait a little bit longer if it doesn't hurt to wait longer, but you can make purchases early on if you choose to.
Making it so that we don't like cycle the first thing in a map and jump straight into a new map, and making it so that we can like defer items for purchase later. I feel like you're learning from our behaviors and complaints.
Yes.
Thanks. It's good. So does any of the like unique ritual loot or any of the like ritual-ish loot, such as new bases or uniques, drop from monsters during the rituals as well, or are all the new things purchasable from this favor store?
They're all purchasable from the favor store. So the new rewards do not drop from the actual monsters while you're fighting it. And we did that because we wanted the player to have to make a informed decision to pick that item, a chance for them to be presented with it and decide it versus other tempting things at the same time, to have a bit more gravitas there.
Okay, so I'm curious about these ritual vessels then. So they capture monsters from a ritual site to use in later maps. Is this instead of doing the ritual, or like an after thing after you finish the ritual?
It's an after thing. So you do a ritual, and if you think, man, that was a lot of monsters, somehow I got like a boss in there, I kind of feel there's a lot of tribute, let's capture it. And then you capture it after it. So you still got all the benefits of killing the monsters, all the tribute you get your reward from that, and then you have a chance of capturing that so that you can use it to juice a map up later.
I imagine the ritual favor points based on the monsters you kill. So just having a boss in there give you a lot more or something?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll get an idea for what just gave you a lot of favor, and that's when you stick it in a bottle and use that to juice up a map later. And it's one of those things where not only do the ritual vessels give you a bunch of favor by using them on a map, but it also just makes better rewards spawn. And so you'll get a totally juiced map. You'll chuck Beyond and Delirium on it, throw as many of these vessels as you can in there, and just have an absolutely insane time, and then get a boatload of tribute, and really hope that you have good rewards in the window, and they will be better than average by that point. So, I'm not guaranteeing you'll see a hit under then. I'm sure many people won't do. In fact, most people won't do, but you never know.
I instantly saw the potential here for like some sort of infinite loops. I'm wondering if you've counteracted that. The ritual vessels apply the captured monsters to all ritual sites in a new map. If you use a ritual vessel on the new map that is already enhanced, do you capture more and then can take that to the next map and then add infinitum?
We thought of that one. You can only use ritual vessels if you haven't used any on the map that you're playing. So it has to be on a vanilla ritual site.
Okay, so it's kind of like a one-on-one off sort of deal.
Yeah, which honestly isn't a problem. It'll be totally fine.
Okay, you're thinking of everything. All right.
That's one of the advantages of having the extra month, right? Like our goal was to release this in December, and we've taken extra time to actually, QA stuff as thoroughly as we can do, and to think of these things and put time into balancing it and making it good and making a good announcement stream. And, it's been really helpful.
Yeah. You had an extra month or two, roughly?
Yeah, 1 month, of extra time. And sure, there's still things being tweaked, right? Like, people were away over, Christmas and New Year during that time, and not everything was finished at exactly the point we wanted to a month ago, but it's certainly very smooth sailing through that period while we're working on 3.14 at the same time as putting finishing touches and testing on 3.13. Like, I believe that we have a 99% functional alpha build being deployed today for the alpha testers to start giving us a week of feedback on. And I know it sounds crazy for us to be making a big deal about alpha testers having a week to test it, but normally we're like, we're launching tomorrow. It's not done. The league's turned off. The bosses are turned off. Go. And there's nothing to test apart from does it crash. But now we actually have every single thing is there kind of situation for alpha. Though it's worth noting while I'm talking about alpha, because there's various competitions and that kind of stuff being arranged for league launch, and obviously alpha testers would have an advantage. One of the rules that we're putting in place is if you've played on alpha for a given expansion, you're not eligible to receive prizes. And so that's a big decision that alpha testers are going to have to make, where if they're actually like a top tier streamer who wants to compete, they probably shouldn't be signing up for the thing that gets them a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
So if you've had a chance to pre-play the content, you won't be able to win prizes. You can still compete, but people will know you're an alpha tester and you don't actually get anything for winning. And so that's our attempt at making sure that with a properly functional alpha testing program, we have a degree of fairness in there.
That's really like surprising and awesome to hear. Like, because I feel like this has always been like a little thing in the background that's never really been fully acknowledged. That's really awesome to hear.
And I want to emphasize, because I can already see my email box blowing up. Please do not email me or other staff members asking for alpha access. It doesn't work that way. Like, we literally have a policy of if you ask, you're not getting it, kind of, right? So we have ways of selecting people. As the program continues to function better, we will add more people, but we'll do it in a fair way that gives people a chance to apply, or we'll select them based on their merits. And the best way to become an alpha tester is provide consistent bug report feedback on the main site. We invite people by looking at who is just giving us great feedback and putting time in. Alpha testing is not a prestige thing. It's something which is almost like an unpaid job, And thank you to the alpha testers for their feedback and unpaid work there.
Good stuff. Just a couple more questions before we move on to some questions from the chat. With the rework to the harvest system, removing the gardening side of things, how will the Ashabi quest and fight happen, or has she retired?
So you'll randomly encounter Ashabi relatively rarely. So you'll stumble in there expecting to get choices of crafting options, and there's the tree ready to go with the Ashabi fight.
Ah, okay. So it's just kind of a random spawn thing now.
Infrequently, yes.
Okay.
We
Heist,
rebalanced her rewards and stuff, of course, to compensate for this.
Gotcha. So to Heist now, the meta for getting the most value out of the system really became centered around the duplication of extremely valuable blueprints and running them infinitely for massive amounts of currency. Is anything happening that will affect this?
So I want to clarify that when Ziggy says duplication, he means through legitimate game mechanics. There are a couple of ways of copying the blueprints. And so, this is not an exploit-filled game if anyone is watching and worried about that. But yeah, no, it's totally fine. There are mechanics that let you split the blueprints, where the problem with that wasn't so much that the base blueprint was a good one that was being split, because there was a cost to splitting it. It was the fact you could fully reveal every single aspect of it, and then that would just carry on to the copied copy. And so the first change we're making here is that the split copies do not have any reveals. They're basically a like the rewards are the same, but they're entirely unrevealed again. And so you can continue exactly the same strategy if you have enough reveals for every single copy and enough markers to achieve that. And that's quite a big cost. That makes it significantly less economically insane to do it. But it still makes it good to do it. Like, it still means that if you put the effort into finding the perfect blueprint, having the master copy, going and putting effort into getting the ingredients you need to be able to split it, like the fossils or the beasts and stuff, you can still profit from this. But it's not quite as crazy. In addition, there's significant rebalance that went into the rewards, especially around those top tier blueprints. So the currency one is less insane, for example, and we're pretty happy with where this is. And when the community finds something awesome and profitable like that, we don't want to just turn it off. You know, we want to find a place where it now has a good, good location in the game to exist. And so we're more happy with this from a balance point of view. We think that it will still be potentially a good strategy for some players to do, but it won't be a ridiculous strategy that creates a lot of feel-bads for the rest of the community.
All right, good stuff. We have some questions from chat now. Thank you all for submitting your questions. First one comes in from Not Cakes. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So will Beyond, for example, only be available on the Lex Proxima region and no other?
I believe so. I'm just going to double check this with my guys. That's true, right?
Most mechanics appear on huge.
Okay. Yeah, so most mechanics appear on a few regions, but yes, it is true that if you want to do Beyond on, say, Glennet Cairns or whatever, if it's not there, then you do not have the ability to specialize Beyond in that region. And so the experiment we're trying here is allowing people to specialize on certain areas of the Atlas. It's not a global thing where you're just juicing your entire Atlas at once. You will have to find maps in that region. Of course, this can change over time. Give us feedback as you play. We think it's actually quite fun this way. It's certainly a more advanced way of doing it than what we could have done at face value, but we try to do it the interesting way rather than just say broadly a whole Atlas is juiced.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for things not being fully homogenized, not all being the same. Provides like interesting strategies and stuff that comes out of that. So it's good to see that. I imagine this also gives you another like lever that you can change in the future to shake up the Atlas. Instead of just moving maps around, you can move what regions have what things, which could unlock new strategies.
Absolutely, yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how it pans out based on people's actual activity when they play it.
All right. Arta Eva asks, as this league is boss driven, will there be any rebalance of XP or drops for boss encounters, as it will take way more time for such encounters, like the enhanced bosses, for example?
Do you guys have any comments? We haven't put any work into changing the experience and drops for those bosses, though we are careful to make sure that they're in a good place. You know, we if we saw any problems, we would fix it, but we haven't deemed there to be any issues there. Yeah, the team don't think it's going to take a lot longer. Most people get their boss fights done relatively quickly.
All right. Vice versa, 951 asks, can the Maven witness unique map bosses? If so, can there boss-specific loot drop in the boss rush?
No, you can't witness unique map bosses. That's something we certainly discussed and tried to achieve, but there are significant logistical issues on that one, so that's a thing for later.
Yeah, I imagine there'd be some pretty insane ones. Like some of those bosses have immunity during certain periods and stuff. We have to move them around the map and stuff. So yeah. Knockcake's got two questions. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So, wait, that is a repeated question. Oops, never mind. Casually Stoned asks, what order of rarity are we talking about with the new influence Maven orb? Something like influence exalt? Mirrors?
They're estimating around the Awakener's orb level. You know, we certainly want it to be pretty punchy.
Makes sense since it's, I imagine, a drop from her fight.
That's a good assumption to make.
That's a very clever non-answer there, Chris.
Yeah, oh no, it's only sense, but as an Act 1.
Okay. Sylthia asks, do we get skill points for each of the 8 Atlas skill trees, or do we just get 2 points and have to choose which tree to allocate in?
It's all on a per region basis. So you can completely max out a single region potentially before you touch the other ones if you choose to. And so to specifically answer the question, as you do the multi-boss fights in a given region, you get points for that particular region's trees.
Taking my own question on there, roughly where does this line up? Is this like Awaken at 8, we're likely to have all the skill points unlocked, or is it significantly longer than that in terms of a tail of content?
How do you guys feel about that?
All of them in all regions is probably Awaken at 8, but to get all points in one region could be.
Okay, yeah, so they clarify that Awaken at 8 is about a good estimate for all regions, all trees, but to get all the points in a single region could be a fair while before that.
Okay, so that's like a longer tail thing that you can focus on, like
Mm.
unlocking. It's like you're settling into unlock your longer term strategies kind of thing.
Yeah, and it
Right.
honestly depends on what you're prioritizing, right? Like you're going to prioritize the regions with things you want to be playing, and so you'll probably get those significantly further ahead than the ones where you're just doing it because you might occasionally play a map in that region and you don't really care about those mechanics.
Right. Same old asks, oh, a rather interesting question. Can you drop craftable watchstones before you get all the normal watchstones, thus amplifying your progression or speeding it up?
The craftable ones are super endgame rewards. Can you guys clarify? Yeah, you technically can. I mean, you may not have all of your 32 watchstones by the time that you start to get craftable ones. But yeah, the craftable ones are meant to be mostly coming after the normal ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and you can also trade for them, right? Like you could earn
Yeah.
a bunch of currency doing something else and then fill up your atlas that way if that you feel is the best plan.
All right. Zen21 asks, does the tier of the map bosses affect the captured boss, like how watchstones alter tiers of maps in retros? This in reference to ritual. In ritual.
I'm failing to parse this question mentally.
So if you capture a boss and mobs in like tier 10, does that affect if you apply it to like a tier 5 map? Does that make them really dangerous, or does it scale to the map that you apply it to, I guess?
Good question.
Inherits the area level of the map.
Right. It inherits the area level of the map that you captured it in.
Oh, okay. So pay attention to that then, if you like trade for them.
Yeah.
With respect to the Maven,
Yes. So that's with respect.
levels.
Right. So with respect to ritual, it inherits the level of the one you captured, and with regard to the Maven, it has a fixed level per encounter.
Okay, gotcha.
So you're saying that the 3, 4, 5, and so on are at fixed? Yeah. Okay.
So the 10 one is tier 16 equivalent.
Yeah. So when you're fighting 10 bosses at the same time, they're going to be tier 16 equivalently scaled ones, regardless of whether it was a low tier map that you captured it in.
Have to capture
Oh, and
high tier maps.
yeah, you have to capture them in high tier maps in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of border cases that I don't get exposed to when working on this, that the guys who are physically setting them actually understand.
Yeah, I'll mention if you guys have like pretty technical questions, a lot of that stuff is really often answered in the kind of FAQ that's released a little bit closer to launch as well.
Yeah, Bex is looking into how much community confusion there is, and will release an FAQ if necessary. It's partly that we're hoping that this Q&A helps solve most of the stuff, because it's a good opportunity to clarify things and explain it in plain English and so on. But, you know, there'll probably be fine details we need to clarify afterwards.
I thought this was a good idea just because my first like feeling after watching the video that I was just like super overwhelmed and it was hard to like process everything just because of the sheer amount of info in that like 30-minute reveal. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty good idea for that. Hopefully people kind of like settling into it.
Should we have slowed it down and like spread it out over an hour and just be chill about it as we go, or is it good to have that pace of content?
I think it's great for people to be like overwhelmed and freaking out and their heads exploding. They have like a week to get used to it all and figure it all out on Reddit and everything. So
We didn't want to waste people's time, and there was a lot to cover, so we just got right into it.
Yeah, totally. And we have, you know, this downtime and then Baeclast afterwards to, you know, unwind a little bit and process. So that's
Fair
good. Snoozius asks, who gets the choice/drop in ritual when multiplayer game? Well, like when playing with friends.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is one of the leagues where it's the instance owner who gets to choose the rewards. And so you do not all get your own tribute. You do have to like work out what you're getting as a group and to share it. And it's usually based on implementation detail that we decide that. We ideally want rewards to be shared across the group where possible, but if it doesn't make sense for how we're actually structuring the league, then sometimes that's the outcome. And when doing it, we just make sure that there are enough rewards for playing as a group and you get the ability to share it out as you choose. If your group are bad at sharing, I would encourage you to take turns opening the maps so you each get the chance to be bad at sharing with your friends.
Wow. True though. Clemmy Clem asks, will there be sextant mods that affect the amount of ritual points you get whenever a ritual mechanic spawns in the map?
Yeah. If the sextants spawn packs and the packs spawn within the ritual site, then it absolutely does affect it. In terms of actually adding mods to sextants that affect rituals directly, that's something we would do if ritual goes core later, potentially. We have not confirmed or decided, have no idea whether it's going core. It depends a lot on what people say. If they like it, don't like it, you know?
It's significant to know that like just enhancing the map effectively will add extra packs to the ritual site as well, and that it's not fully isolated.
Yeah.
It's Parsalien asks, are there always 3 rituals per zone, or does the number of rituals per zone increase as you progress through the story, or does it change in other ways? I'll add on.
My understanding is it does get larger. Let me just clarify with the guys.
Scales very slightly.
Yeah, so it does scale very slightly. So the range of number of rituals you can get does get higher as you get into higher tier areas. We do want it to stay simple at the beginning of the storyline, so you're not having to do like 6 ritual fights on the coast or something. But by the time you're handling red tier maps, I'm sure you're getting quite a lot.
It reminds me of like a cross between like shrines and a beyond, a breach kind of encounter. So having like 3 or something seems like a lot of extra monsters per zone. What is the range here? Is it like 3 to 6, 3 to 5,
What's
1
the
to
cap?
3?
Okay, like 4 is the cap, right? Yeah, 4 is the cap. Currently, this is the kind of thing we're iterating on while doing our testing. You never know; the alpha testers might have feedback. You'll probably find that 4 is a reasonable number when you try it out.
All right, that does seem like a lot. Burkjam asks, are there going to be stash tabs for Heist, Harvest, and Ritual?
We do not have any new stash tabs at the moment. I don't think Ritual needs to have a stash tab. You get some vessels, but they're real rare, and you kind of use them as you get them.
I guess like one item doesn't really warrant a tab for them.
Yeah, we've been pretty clear about our policy for tabs now, where we've explained that if there's mandatory progression items, we'll provide free storage for them, and if there's optional reward style stuff that you would normally just store in regular tabs, then we may provide purchasable specialized storage for that for people that want it. And we're trying to find a sweet spot here where tabs aren't mandatory, but at the same time we can still fund development of the game.
I think we have a question from Amy here. What are your thoughts on support characters, for example, Aurobots and stuff like that? And how would you like to move forwards with that archetype in the future?
Well, I think it's really important that players have a lot of different ways of playing, and it's even interesting to see within our team how many people like playing support characters, including very, very senior members of the team, Mark. So we definitely want to make sure it's fully supported, and I think that because the person who has the title of game director on Path of Exile plays support characters, you're probably likely to see stuff in the future. What he's planning, I honestly don't know. That's above my pay grade.
I feel like they are generally insanely strong, and it's just like not that many people get into them for it to be a big problem. Whereas if like half the player base was playing support characters, it would be something you'd have to tone down.
Mike clarifies there's no bias whatsoever, but
oh, yeah.
Philosophically, I see Path of Exile as a game with many, many ways to play. If you want to sit and trade with people, just sit there flipping currency. That's a valid way to play. It generates currency. If you want to sit there working out the perfect heist, if you want to sit there, taking advantage of the new league content and trying to be the first person to work out how to get the best rewards, that is a valid way to play the game. And playing an aura character that doesn't kill monsters directly, also a great way to play the game. And I think that providing more avenues beyond just killing monsters helps with action RPGs quite a lot, because there are 1,000 ways to kill monsters already. It's good to add a few hundred other ways to play too.
Great stuff. Stale Humor asks, what is your favorite skill gem change? What skill gem are you looking forward to using and seeing used by the community?
There's this blankness when I realize I haven't actually gone through the patch notes yet myself. Mark and Andrew, do you have any favorite skill gem changes that you're aware of in this particular patch? Okay, what happened with Scorching Ray? Cast time got halved. Okay, so there's some excitement about Scorching Ray. They had a mandate basically, and not these particular developers, but the designers working on the skills had a mandate basically of, buff as many skills in impactful ways as possible. And I think there are 40 existing ones, which is kind of an understated part of this expansion. There could have been a lot more attention put on that, but the goal is basically that no one knows what's best to play now. There's 19 sets of Ascendancy changes, 40 skills buffed. It should mix the meta up a lot more than most normal expansion releases do, and hopefully for a decent amount of time. Like, I don't think this one will be solved quite so quickly.
All right. World Creator asks, bearing in mind we're going to have a huge Ascendancy rework, what about the Scion? What are your thoughts on Scion in general?
The Scion has been reworked as part of the expansion. So basically all 19 Ascendancy classes got attention, where we sat there and said, what are we doing with this tree? How are we changing it? 3 of them had quite large implementation-based sets of changes. The Inquisitor, Elementalist, and Deadeye actually had some serious amount of work, but the other ones at least had us going through and reviewing each thing and changing stuff. And so the amount varies from class to class, but we made sure the Scion was included. I personally am generally relatively happy with her place, and this is partly because if we make her too powerful, she jumps right ahead quite quickly, and so it's in a pretty good place, but we don't want her to lag behind.
Jard Extreme wants to know if you're going to implement the trade website as an in-game thing.
I don't see harm in doing this, and I kind of do think that it would be a positive thing to have the ability to embed a browser in the game so that you can directly link stuff, you can click on people's names to automatically whisper them. It's not at all against our philosophy with trade, right? Like, we're not against making things easier from a convenience point of view. It's more about, the fundamentals of how trade works that we have a bit of philosophical views on. Having said that, there are interesting issues with getting it working in game to do with embedding browsers and the right middleware for that and various issues, and we just haven't got to that yet. It is fascinating how complicated development gets when you're targeting multiple platforms and consoles, and like let's say hypothetically you pick some middleware to embed websites in your game, and then that middleware may not work on like M1 ARM processor Macs, for example, and then our Mac users get upset at that, or it just requires a bit of work to get that kind of stuff going. And in the meantime, people can alt tab.
All right, good stuff.
Or command key tab or whatever.
Is there any like thing you really want to point out to people, like your favorite thing from the announcement, since you probably combed over this a few times now? Anything that really stood out that you really want to mention to people? What was your favorite?
It's actually pretty difficult to pick what the favorite is here, because I mean, the League itself is one of the best combat focused ones we've done for a while. It's just a pure risk versus reward kind of thing. The player chooses how deep they want to go with the rituals, and in the end game they can choose how deep they want to stack the amount of monsters. And the tribute is literally costing on various items from throughout Path of Exile's history and some new ones. And the deferral system makes some very, very interesting choices there, because you'll see really expensive stuff, and putting it on lay-by over time kind of makes it cost more over time, but you do actually get to afford it even if you can't today. And so that will be an interesting experiment. So the League itself obviously wants a big expansion to go with it, but is probably going to be one of the more, condensed fun ones that we've done for quite some time. Very true Path of Exile. The expansion just adds so much to the end game, and honestly, like, my amount of late end game Path of Exile play recently has been relatively low, so I don't even understand the depth of the expansion. Every time we're discussing it in the team, I realize that it's way more than I thought it was, and that's going to be exciting. So I'm expecting that to have quite a long impact on the end game for some time. And then one thing I wanted to really make sure with this expansion was that the amount of metagame mix-up, as we were just talking, was quite high. We really didn't want it to be that there's a league and there's an expansion, but you're playing the same build you were playing last league. And so I think that the unsung hero of it is going to be the fact that there's a lot of new viable builds and craziness that's going to be happening there.
Awesome stuff. Also, you made golems respawn. Just wanted to point that out. That's awesome.
Yep. And there are a lot of ascendancies and a lot of region trees and a lot of other stuff that we get to reveal over the next week.
Fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the Q&A, Chris. We're going to take a short break here on the live stream and then head on over to Baeclast to unpack a little bit.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you very much. I assume
Hi, chat. So today we're just going to be reacting to everything that happened. But before we do that, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the community team who've been managing all the stream stuff on their end. And also, if anything goes wrong, blame GGG, not us. But anyway, what was everyone's first initial reaction? We'll start with you, Rise. What did you think of the 3.13 announcement?
Like 15 minutes in, it was so much. A lot of the things I just wasn't expecting to be done now, especially the Ascendancy rework that kind of came out of nowhere. You know, I always expect some new skills, all that sort of stuff, especially since it's like a endgame expansion. But man, the skill reworks and the Ascendancy reworks, that's really going to shake things up. And especially since we're heading into a potential boss kill sort of situation, and the entire theme of the expansion seemingly being about bosses. And it's something to stay too, because it's not a league, right? It's Ritual is the league. We're talking about the game now. So pretty freaking cool stuff.
What about you, Niggy?
I mean, I'm with Rise on this. Great stuff. I was just surprised, and then I was more surprised, and then the most surprised. My jaw dropped probably like 8 times during the whole thing. So yeah, really excited. Both the actual expansion and the league. I think the league, with how it looks, seems to be a very, very good fit for this. So yeah, pretty good. Ascendancies, I did not expect, and that much. I think that was the most surprising moment of all of it, was the Ascendancies, that we get that on top. So
and 40
yeah.
skill changes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, hopefully, what Chris said in the Q&A is held true through all the skill changes, and we don't see a 6% damage buff to Glacial Hammer. You know, like he said, there was a mandate to make these changes impactful and to make them, make these things much more viable. Whatever it is they were touching up. Scorching Ray is the only one we heard about.
Glacial Hammer? Oh, that's ruined my plans.
I did get worried about the Scorching Ray thing. It's supposed to be exciting, but then it doesn't double the cast speed just mean that it turns faster?
I mean, I imagine
it turns faster and it will ramp to max damage faster as well. Yeah, it does actually do really good damage. Like, if you put it into POB, I've been trying to do it the last couple of leagues. The numbers are good, but it's just
it's clunky.
It's just so slow. POE just...
I would hope Incinerate gets the same treatment. They like stealth buffed the wave release, and now if it would get like double the cast speed too, because it has half the cast speed for the stages for some reason, because that's how it used to work, I guess. And yeah, there's a lot of little skills like this. And also the league mechanic itself, it's kind of cool in a way where it's like, I think Chris described it as like a bite-size encounter, but it might as well be like a bite-size like boss encounter to me, where you have to engage with a boss type mechanic like they were showing with the beam going around. I don't know. I really like the idea of that. I can't wait to get completely messed up by like a weird position where it's in the boss room by the wall and they've got like a 3-centimeter thing to move around in.
You know that one architect in the temple that does the spinny beam with corrupting blood that just murders you if you stand in it? That's gonna be one of the mechanics, I'm calling it. And it's going to kill me in hardcore.
Nice.
They didn't say how many it was, right? Like how many of those different ones?
No,
I didn't think so.
Chris said that there's more than they showed, but
nice.
I'm sure there'll be a lot. You've been sat on this for a while, Ziggy. What were your initial reactions kind of going into the whole thing?
Yeah, so I got this video, like an earlier version of that reveal video a couple days ago to play in the Q&A.
I only got it 1 day ago, by the way. Sorry, continue, Ziggy. I'm not bitter or anything. It's fine.
I'm so mad. He's so mad.
Refused, by the way. Integrity and all that.
Sure. Pecking order is clear. Anywho. Yeah, I had to write Q&A questions, and my plan was like write them after I watched it the first time, but it was actually just too much. So I literally just went and watched TV for a few hours because it was too much to... It was too, like, my head... I saw a lot of people in chat saying, like, too much! That's kind of how I felt watching it the first time. So I came back a few hours later and watched it again, and then I watched it a third time, and then I wrote my Q&A questions. It's just so much.
I had to watch it 3 times as well. I had a very similar thing of, like, I watched it all through, and I'm like, I took none of that in, and I just had to watch it all again.
It was like almost in one ear and out the other. I was just, like, excited, but I didn't know what for, because I couldn't take it in. Yeah, pretty huge info dump, I'll tell you what.
But was there like nothing in particular that like stood out to you, Ziggy, or is you just like everything is amazing?
Oh yeah, like I definitely didn't expect the significant. Well, I'm super excited about how much Elementalist changed in particular. I felt like that looks really flavorful and like they really nailed down on that flavor, and seems much more mechanically impactful. Like I think the most definitive thing that they did, this might not be the most exciting change, but there's that one node that used to give you like just randomly AoE or damage on like a cycling thing, but they made that contextual now based on whether you've like hit a unique monster recently. That's just that is like exemplary of like how they've changed Elementalist in general, I think, and I really like that. It's just like, oh, that makes so much more sense. I saw that and I was like, oh, that's so much better. So
See,
yeah,
they
I like that.
kind of started doing that sort of thing a little bit with the assassin changes a while ago, where like it dictates defenses or offense depending on like what you're fighting. And I really like that idea, so I'm glad to
Yeah.
see them kind of going in and really doing it in a much better way, I think.
Yeah, even Slayer to some degree. You just don't see Slayers
Yeah.
nowadays.
I think for me as well, just to echo everything, because it's like I knew that okay, we're gonna get a cool new expansion, we're gonna get some league stuff, and I find it funny that they put all of that work in, but they're like Elementalist. I'm like, whoa, this is the real stuff right here. That's what really got me excited. And Toxic Rain Deadeye actually looks pretty cool with the Mirage Archer. I guess they're like turrets now or something. Like you can have multiple
yeah.
Mirage Archers, which is
What
like,
happened with Deadeye is like, oh, this looks good, this looks clean, and then Deadeye is just like, just everything, like, what happened?
They
It's especially-
really. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just especially weird because going into PoE 2 at some point, I was expecting this sort of thing to be like what they would use to lead up to PoE 2, considering like old and new ascendancies. But then they put like 40 different nodes into one thing. Like,
I'm not
going
complaining.
on?
I will admit that was when I first started. I'm like, they've I think they had one too many ideas, and they're like, we'll just put them all in. So just give them all of it.
I love that the
though,
tree
it's
is
good.
like a big loop and it's all interconnected like a spider
Yeah.
web. It's like every other tree is like doot doot, neat little lines, and then Deadeye's like, "Wah!" It looks exactly like Deadeye's projectiles chaining off walls and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what the tree looks like.
I mean, it looks
love it.
messy, but I really like the idea of it. You know, aesthetics aside, I think it's really neat that you have all these different like sort of sub specializations in Deadeye you can go for, and at the end of each one, you still get +2 proj if that's what you want. So you can be like +2 proj in far shot, but if you want to be close, you can go the other route and so on.
Yeah, I think it's really good that they let you come into it through multiple ways, and we saw that
Yes.
with them like swapping the nodes around on Slayer, and then from what the very brief image we saw of a Cultist, where not much has changed, but they've like separated it up, so there's less like I have to go through this node, I don't want to get this node, I do want. So that is something that I do really appreciate. So we're all just like, cool, Ascendancy changes are awesome. Was there anything from the Chris Q&A before we get into specific echoes, like the specific stuff? Was there anything from the Chris Q&A that really stood out to you guys?
It does seem like they've tried to get ahead of the 8-ball on a lot of potential min-maxes and a lot of potential like abuses is a strong word, but you know, ways of exploiting the new systems that are coming out, and I'm happy to see that. I still have some concerns, but we can get to those later in the podcast.
No
I mean-
revert, knockback, cyclone, and no damage dealt builds, pulling in all mobs into the
Yes,
ritual.
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was good. Yeah.
I was so glad.
I do
good
want. I do worry a little bit that the fact that extra monsters you pull to your ritual zone don't do anything isn't going to be communicated well in game. We haven't, seen that, because someone who didn't catch the podcast or someone who didn't catch this reveal stream or didn't go look for outside resources might waste time doing that because they think it does something. If there's no feedback from the game that tells you that's pointless,
but-
then
I actually really like that, to be honest. It's like, when you used to play like Pokemon, like if I spam B, it increases my chance to capture. I do like the idea of someone spending the entire league carefully, like getting
Yeah,
every
but-
single monster onto the point for no benefit
That's
whatsoever.
not
Yeah, but
gonna-
that's like PoE in a
No.
nutshell, right? Like,
I mean, I don't think
But
it's
it's
going to
not gonna
happen to
happen.
that degree.
No, but think about it. Like you do it once and you see things are not spawning. You're not going to do it again.
Yeah,
You
but
might
if they
do
do
it a
it
couple
once and they got like an
times.
exalt, then it's like, oh no, this is what gave me that.
But
Yeah,
exalt.
there's
This
the
is
very-
Once you're spawning, if you pull like a whole unique pack that you haven't seen before, I think people will be fine. I don't think it's going to be a big concern.
yeah, but then like you've got Delirium, where I would imagine Delirium doesn't work because you need to spawn the monsters. So then
Yeah.
that wouldn't work. But then Beyond would, because it's spawning mid-ritual, I would imagine. So it's like, I'm surprised about how hard they went in on Beyond as well with the passive modifiers and everything, especially after we got the announcement. Well, granted, PoE 2 is still far away, but they will be removing some mechanics, and one of them being Beyond. And I don't know, from the looks of it, if some people played the Mayhem, if some people played the Flashback, Beyond can be a lot of fun, especially in the Mayhem with the Harpies. It was a ton of fun. So now to be able to modify it, I think it's going to make it extra difficult for them to kind of just go, yeah, we're removing this thing that you loved so much, with it being like one of the core really elements of the Echoes of the Atlas, right?
I was
Because
surprised
that's really
to
what
see
it's all about.
Torment. That was the one that, like, the Beyond thing. That's a good point because we don't know whether, like, the future of Beyond. But I was a little bit surprised, like, yes, the Torment passive skill tree. This is what I've always wanted in Path of
Incursion too.
Exile.
I was like,
I was a little surprised to see Torment, but on reading it, it actually does seem like it wouldn't be like awful. 20 tormented monsters, like uniques and rares in a zone. The most annoying thing about Torment is chasing the goddamn ghosts into something
Yeah,
and
because
getting
they're
anything
already
useful out of them.
possessed.
If it's
Yeah.
already
the
possessed,
mechanic,
then yeah,
the mechanic
having
is,
more
okay.
dangerous rare monsters that drop more loot is cool. I'm fine with that. I just don't like chasing ghosts.
The worst part of the mechanic is the mechanic. Got it.
Pretty much.
We bypassed the whole mechanic, yeah.
I actually think Chris mentioned it himself. Like one of the the best strategies for it is with using sextants, since everything is going to be I mean, I think that's going to be being that you can actually use this mechanic consistently and not having to chase the ghosts around and hoping that they're going to go where they want. It's going to make the mechanic so much more enjoyable.
It'll be nice.
Also, sorry, go on.
The system of having slightly varied passive trees for each region of the Atlas is really, really cool in that way, because it works with the sextant system beautifully. Because with Watchstones, you can move your sextants around. So if you happen to roll the Tormented Spirit sextant, or you happen to roll the, I don't know, Nico sextant, and you can move the Nico sextant to where you have delve bonuses, and you can move the Beyond sextant to where you have Beyond bonuses. It's really cool, and it encourages you to jump around the Atlas.
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing also, just from like what we saw, like the whole like strongbox thing, and the fact like we have so many interweaving systems, having just that extra level on top of that. It's something I like a lot more, because a lot of Path of Exile can sometimes feel like, yes, you're using sextants, yes, you're using prophecies, but you're kind of like managing menus, and there's not that much choice. It's kind of like, this is the best thing to do. Whereas with that passive tree system, it's you're using those menus, but you've set your build, like you've spec'd your Atlas that way. You've chosen. It's more. It feels more tangible and less like gamey to me, if that makes sense.
It's especially nice because it's so like customizable in the way where we can finally now remove things from the Atlas again, which was a big issue that now we couldn't. Like, you were locked into map completion. Granted, you could remove the Watchstone, but that's not much of an option for a lot of Atlas setups. So now to be able to know that you can move these around the same way you can with Ascendancies would be really cool.
Since we've kind of just eased into it, let's just go say fall in on the Echoes of the Atlas. So my main thing when I first saw that was up to 10 bosses. What do we think about this like super boss oriented just mechanic?
Looks fun as hell. The bossing focused content in the game has, pretty much always been my favorite. Metamorph is like one of my favorite leagues of all time, despite the fact that we still didn't get the big bad dad boss at the end of it. Bit of a chip on my shoulder. My one concern with it is that Chris mentioned in the Q&A that the 10 boss fight is going to be the repeatable content. And one of my problems with Conquerors of the Atlas that I've had for a long time is that you can't do the lower tier Conquerors again on like newer characters. And if you have a similar thing with this where you like can't do the lower tier boss fights, then you just don't engage with that content on a reroll until your character's basically done, which feels a little unpleasant.
Yeah. Especially since we did used to have the thing where you could always go back and like White Elder all that time ago. So it feels like we kind of lost something we used to have. Yeah, hopefully they can change that in some way.
Well, that is something that surprised me, because the way I understood it was that the 10 boss encounter specifically locked into, well, maybe not T16s, but at least red maps, which was kind of weird to me. I thought that maybe there would be a possibility to get like 10 tier 1 map like bosses, and the rewards would be customized around that, but instead we're kind of like locked into this thing, which it's a little bit of a disappointment, where the content is available, but you are locked out due to your character strength. I guess, for softcore players, maybe they can just level up and then, let's throw my character at this content, see if it actually ends up working out, if it's not too costly to actually fail an encounter like that. But for hardcore, it can be a little bit
Maybe
trickier.
that could be a recipe for downgrading it. Just simply, you get the big stone, and
Could
if
be
you
cool.
really want to do it, you could just have they would have no negative impact for anyone. Like you're going to downgrade it.
Yeah,
I think
and it wouldn't
the
even
one
need to be
thing-
rewarding. Just make it fun,
No, just so you could actually do it. So anyone could do it if they chose to want to do a lesser version. I think if we remember Metamorph, so the Metamorph didn't have any map mods. So that's like one of my concerns with the big area is, are they just going to feel like vanilla white map bosses? So you might have fought a certain boss with like really difficult mods and it felt really strong. And then you take him into the area, which I would assume is just going to be a vanilla area. And therefore, so I think that would be my one concern, even though
Chris
there's a
said-
lot.
Yeah, Chris said something about this, Ziggy. Maybe you remember. I was like, wait.
Yeah. So that one
out
came
the
by
other year.
surprise when I asked that because I didn't know about this mechanic. But apparently, there's an item that you gain to get access to the 10 boss fight. So after you do the quest ones, you get quest items for the 4 and 6 and so on bosses. But the 10 boss has an item that is rollable or drops with mods. or something like that.
Oh, like that. Okay, I missed that.
So it's kind of like the Cortex mechanic then.
So and both this and
Nice.
the fact that you can choose the bosses, I think, helps address at least somewhat the second character question of my next character isn't as strong as my old character. Can I do this content, or do I have to wait until it's level 90 or something? I think because you can choose easier bosses and probably run more chill mods, or maybe run them white or something like that if you can craft them, then that should make it a bit easier to ease into this 10 boss battle, and then later on you can do more difficult bosses. I hope that they make more difficult. They mentioned that it's just a choice of difficulty, though. I hope that the harder bosses present some sort of extra benefits, potentially. So maybe that's something they reconsider, or there's something else there implicitly more rewarding about doing more challenging boss combinations.
I mean, maybe
So hard to
Maven will be
customize.
pleased with your tribute of doing harder content and then show up more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're trying to entertain her in an arena, right? So it's
Yes.
you come up it would be. I've always loved the idea of map mods, for example, presenting things where certain mods gave you a little bit of a benefit, but then combinations of difficult mods that synergize badly would give you some sort of extra bonus. Now that's a pretty complex system to design, sure, but that'd be really cool for a boss system like this, where these two bosses together synergize and do these nasty combos together. So it's more rewarding to do them together because it's more difficult. That'd be so cool.
That would be a very
So
cool system.
hard. Because it's so many,
Yeah.
even with essences, right? Essences, when they were introduced, they were kind of like that, where you've got the envy essence that pulls you in, but then the hatred releases 10 different projectiles. But if it pulls you in at the time that it releases the projectiles, you get hit by 10 projectiles and you instantly die. So it's those sort of combinations would be pretty freaking insane, I think.
Yeah, it'd be nuts. I'm dreaming.
Even with Metamorph, you could sometimes see that where something would slow you down, then another thing would just destroy you.
Yeah.
But it would be beautiful, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they did say that there's maybe going to be more bosses in the future, right? That this is not a pantheon? We don't use that word.
Yeah,
here.
there's this whole other dimension thing that's been kind of explored slowly in Path of Exile through various expansions. And so Chris mentioned that the Maven is looking for the Elder, or wanting to know what happened to the Elder. So maybe Elder's extended cantankerous family of Eldritch horrors. That's so good. I love that. It's so exciting. So yeah, there could be more. They
didn't,
definitely positioned it that way.
He didn't show up to the last Eldritch Thanksgiving dinner. And then he didn't go out and find him.
Imagine if Elder's in their universe, a small child. So we beat up on their small
Oh
child.
my god.
And the Maven's the mom.
Elder
Alright.
was the Raditz of the story. It's all over.
No, we're getting Space Mom this season. Oh, so good.
Getting
One thing I'm
Vegeta.
curious about, which obviously we won't see until we actually get to play it, but where do you kind of see this meshing in with the current Cirrus progression system in terms of pacing?
So I asked about
re-
that a bit, and they said that you'd likely have all the trees unlocked at least partially by Awakening 8 level,
Hmm.
but then
But
you'd have to
like,
focus on some.
I don't understand how it's related though, because isn't it strictly due to the amount of bosses that you kill and like what kind of encounter you can complete? Because if I didn't, the 10 boss encounters opens the 8 Atlas Ascendancy points, or the 10, sorry, the way I understood it. So can't you just have like 4 Watchstones so you have tier 16s, but then get all the other stuff? Like, granted, you can't place it. I guess if you don't have the Watchstones, then you can't have the modifiers, maybe, or
I'm
you
not
can, but only on
following
low
this.
level maps. It's
I
like
I
suspect
think
it's like a boss capture, like capture these bosses in each region is how you upgrade that. Like that region's
oh,
passive tree and get the points for it. So you
Right.
capture these bosses, then fight them in their arena, and then you capture extra bosses, and then fight the 6, and then capture more bosses, fight the 8, capture more bosses, fight the 10. Then you unlock each points each time you do that.
but it's
This
not
is
a
what
matter of like specific bosses.
It might not be, yeah. It might be just number.
Divine Vessels should have been. This is
See,
Divine
that's what I
Vessels,
was.
but way more badass.
Mm.
I mean, the
Yeah,
good
but in a
thing
way, I
by
hate it too. Like if it
the
is
good
like kind of
Go
divine
ahead.
related, divine vessel related, then I kind of hate it.
I mean,
so.
it's not.
Sorry, Tarky. I mean, it kind of
um
sounds like it a little bit because initially I thought that it
nah.
was just literally boils down to the number of bosses more so than like specific bosses or anything else.
I think the main thing that I guess it will depend on, because we don't know exactly how it will function. But it should be quite like eye-opening in the first week of the new league, the kinds of questions we get from people. Because I know when the first Watchstone system came out, it was very easy to be like, why am I not getting any more Watchstones? How is this going to function? So hopefully they can telegraph it in a way that it makes sense. And if it is a case of you need to do this in this region to unlock that thing, it could be quite a good way of like if they can try and make it tie in, so it's like, oh, you're doing this region to unlock these Watchstones, but while you're unlocking those Watchstones, you're also progressing like your Maven. It could have a really nice flow to it, and it could maybe guide some players who get lost of the Watchstone system into like more targeted. Okay, I've done this, now I'm done. I go there, I do this. One thing which would maybe feel a little bit awkward if it's a case of you finish one system and you want to move to a different region, but you haven't finished the other, so you feel like you're stuck, if that makes sense. Like if you feel like you can't progress both at the same time, if like you're having to overfarm one region to get the other unlocked, like that, like it could either be like really smooth and like really synergistic, or it could maybe be a little bit fiddly. But I mean, we'll find out.
You think you have to do like the 10 boss encounter for every region? That would be sounds a lot. Like I would think it would be across the board. I like how Chris also like kind of glossed over it. Like speaking of new players earlier, where it was like, oh yeah, by that time you should have a pretty firm grasp. It's like, no, like you first see the Atlas, that's like insane. Then finally Xana shows up in like tier 3 maps. Like, what the fuck are these strongholds? And now this also kicks in. It's like, what is happening? I don't know.
I think this is pretty unabashedly an expansion for entrenched core players of the game.
Yeah.
I think this is the time for it, and this is definitely the focus.
I do kind of wish that I was watching Carveruscu's stream, because I can imagine he was just like, no, why are you doing this? Because he always gets so excited when we get these massive Atlas things. So we just know, like, okay, you will solve this situation for me, because I'm not smart enough for this. Poor Carv.
One thing I really like about the expansion is that it gives us kind of older players a way to be wowed again by complex systems. Because one of the things that new players get when they first open the passive tree, which is what the selling point to so many players is that, oh, try opening the passive tree. And now we kind of get to re-experience that with
Try
like,
opening
the
that
new Atlas tree. I think that's really cool. You know, sometimes you can talk about like too much complexion, but POE is built on that.
One of the nice things about the Atlas passive tree as well is that it seemed like the majority of them were just plain and simple, straight up bonuses to generic content. Like these are things you could min-max around if you wanted to. Like you can min-max around getting the ultimate Beyond map in Glennock Cairns or wherever it was they showed you. But if you don't, you're still just getting extra Beyond monsters on every map. Like you get 3% chance for Beyond mobs on every map you run there. Like if you want to just Alk and Go, your Alk and Go has just gotten inarguably better in every zone of the Atlas.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I really agree with that.
across the board.
Also, a huge win for Delve players with the
Oh, yeah.
guaranteed Nico stuff. That's insane.
Yeah, was that like a few hundred sulfite per map based on like the tier or something? Or
Yeah,
was
500
you
for a
just
red
kill the
map.
2,
boss,
3,
you're done.
5.
Yeah.
So just do it. You just get it. You don't have to click on anything. You don't have to spawn the things. You just get it when you finish the map.
Wait, you have to kill the boss though. Like that's the
Yeah,
finishing the map.
yeah. It was
So it's
killing
not
that
just
boss.
opening, going out, in, out, in, out, and you.
No. You know, you actually have to like do something.
So don't do
Time to rush Strand, boss.
So on the like idea of this whole passive skill tree, for a long time we've been asking for a way to like fine tune our interactions with passive league mechanics. It seems like this is how GG's decided we're going to do this. Like, how are we happy with this? Do we think this will hit that middle ground that people wanted, or?
It feels very Path of Exile. But it looks impactful for one, which I think is a huge checkbox. It's not like, 1% more chance of seeing, this thing. Although some of them might be similar to that, but
One of the nodes was 2%, but that's still twice as much as 1%.
it's double what I said, Doc.
Yeah. It's just the first node, though, right?
Yeah, it's
There's
a
one of
small
them. You can
nodes.
maybe stack them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they seem really impactful though. Like one of them is like guaranteed generals, and if a general spawns, there's like both generals will spawn and stuff like that. Like some of these seem huge. So that's huge, and the fact that we can adjust it, focus in on things, change it up, it seems pretty big.
Yeah, on
It's
the
huge
Legion
for
side,
someone. Go ahead.
One thing I'm curious about the new league. Did that have any old league mechanic items?
Yeah, there
Did
was
we see it?
fractured items. For
yeah,
one.
synthesis.
Yeah, there was all
all that.
sorts of stuff in the
But
shop.
like
before.
And we saw
the ones
Zoth
that are
breach
on-
stones and
Right. Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just the same kind of rewards we've been used to seeing from things like Heist and
Yeah.
Legion and all that, but you have more agency over what you want out of each thing. Like
Yeah.
the new league giving you that agency to pick whatever reward you feel suits you from the content, as well as the fact that you can now target a region of the Atlas to farm a particular kind of content more effectively, is huge for solo self-found. Like getting a timeless jewel, for instance, is going to be way easier when you know you can get better legions from just running maps in Lex Proxima, for instance. One of the things that I really, really like about this, I'm a big fan, in case you couldn't tell, is that
Tell
it
us how
lends
you
more
really
of a
feel, Octavian.
it lends more of a sense of identity to the Atlas. Like the Atlas isn't just this arbitrary thing, or it still is, but it doesn't feel as much like an arbitrary thing because, like, Lex Proxima is the Legion zone and Glennock Cairns is the Beyond zone, and you start getting excited when you see a map from a particular region drop potentially if you're in like Solo Self-Found or something.
No, I completely agree with that. That was, I think, probably like my biggest issue with there were things I really liked about the whole Conqueror system, but I always found that whole region thing just felt really tacked on, and I felt like it didn't really serve much of a purpose. Because just like, why have we done this? But no, it's actually given like credence that I'm like, oh, I'm now excited to see this thing, and now I might actually need to learn how to pronounce half of these names. But I did want to say briefly though, on the Legion one specifically, I really liked that they had some stuff in there that Chris mentioned about how, like, if you know your builds aren't that great, you could spec it so that they burst out of their shells quicker, and then once your build is better, you could unspec out of that and then maybe go for something which would be harder. I really like that level of customization they've added in there.
Yeah, stuff to make the content more easier and a bit more rewarding, or harder and a lot more rewarding. Like, for example, extra general spawns and stuff like that. That's added difficulty, but extra reward. That's good point.
Man. Well, this Legion talk just makes me think about Breach and how sad and pathetic it is. I hope that they had some like good modifiers. It was hard to look over it, but especially if you've done the recent events, it's like Breach is in a weird spot. And now with the Ritual too, which is like kind of a updated version of that. It's like a little bit talisman-y, a little bit Parandesy, a little bit breachy. It seems like they combine the good aspects of those leagues. Well, I'm talking about Talisman. I'm talking about the boss situation, which nobody even remembers anyway.
I mean, the big thing with Ritual for me is it's Geed from D2. It's the reroll screen. That was when I first saw that. I'm like, oh, sick.
Ah, right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm gonna pretend
kinda
to know
neat.
what that is.
Yeah, Octavian hasn't played Diablo. Terrible.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Before we go
right.
into ritual, sorry, was there anything else you wanted to say on echoes?
I just wanted to have a small point for Rise. The Breach rewards, I caught those while they were flashed briefly. Breach Lords have a small chance to drop a full Breach Stone was one of them.
Is it a pure one though?
No, not from the text on the screen at least.
Sad.
I have a question. What do you think the
I'd rather
Maven
do
orb
Heist,
does?
you know?
What's
Sorry,
that
what was
again?
that, Ziggy?
I was saying, what do you think the Maven's orb does? They haven't said anything about that.
Didn't they?
Wasn't that
Wasn't
the thing
that
which
the-
removed the influence mod and
Yeah.
added the super? Like,
Oh, I'm a
yeah,
dude.
It's
It's
a super
I thought
orb.
There's so much. Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that. That's crazy.
oh,
Yes.
it's really simple. It's a slight upgrade where your percent int now adds an extra level of int gems. I was like,
Yeah, that's nuts.
yeah, it's just a small upgrade.
Does
I'll
this
totally
mean
try
that
it. Oh, my
does this mean that every influenced affix on every piece of gear has a T0 now? That they had to add that in for
Probably,
every
yeah.
single influenced affix?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's like multiple potential outcomes, or if it's just
Oh, I didn't
one
even think of that.
one
Some of them
upgrade.
might be linked.
And if you have like a lower tier, because some of them have like multiple tiers, right? If you have like a lower tier influence modifier, does it upgrade it a tier, or do you have to like, or does it automatically take it to the super tier?
Wait, hold on.
I think it just upgrades it a tier unless it's at tier 1, and then it goes to the tier 0. It was my understanding of it.
Oh, that's
Wait,
going to be
so
some
they-
awesome gambles.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing as well that like this is certainly some kind of like high investment crafting. Like this is on par with double corruption because you're always risking your item doing this too. You have to have 2 influence modifiers, and you might annul the good one.
Yeah. Well, how would it interact with? Well, do you think it will just ignore like metacrafting stuff? Say you have a suffix and a prefix, and you have like prefixes can't be changed. Could you just like guarantee it'll hit the suffix then, or will it ignore them? It'll probably ignore them, right? I think that's
I would
probably-
imagine it would
imagine-
follow the rules.
Yeah.
I imagine if it can't get rid of a mod, then it's going to always. So like if you have suffixes can't be changed and you have a prefix and a suffix influence mod, it can't get rid of the suffix influence mod if it follows the multi-mod craft.
Yeah.
So it always deletes the prefix, is what you're saying.
If
Yeah, I think
if
so.
you remember Harvest, there are certain instances where if it
Wait,
could
no.
not
Oh, but it can't upgrade.
reapply a mod, it would just say there are no available mods.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think,
it, in the situation I just described, I think Ziggy realized you also wouldn't be able to do
Yeah.
that because that would be changing the suffix.
Yeah,
So-
you'd have to upgrade the suffix, so it's like you don't get your upgrade. So it'd just be like a targeted and null if it did work. Yeah, it probably doesn't work, or it ignores them. Interesting. That's something they'll hopefully answer in the FAQ later, but I'm very curious about that. I'm
Or we
excited
could just
to see
let
the
MP
clips.
waste a bunch of currency and he'll work on for us.
Totally.
Yes. Great idea.
No, that's I love having like a big new boss battle with something exciting, especially when it like interacts with crafting and adds exciting new crafting options. Also, it feels kind of harvesty with the like targeted and null, adding an extra mod or upgrading a mod thing. It feels very harvesty in the way that I like. So that's exciting. Very exciting.
Okay, I'll let you guys pick since you mentioned it. Are we going into ritual or are we going into harvest next?
Ritual.
Fine. Be like that. All right, don't be fun. So yeah. So
Okay.
what did you think about the whole ritual thing? So I think major like D2 vibes.
I got major Grim Dawn vibes. They kind of had like a shrine system too, but it's so much more
yeah.
simple than this, and it works pretty well there. But it's a lot more static here. It seems a lot more random, and yeah, I expect the thing that I like the most again is the fact that it's a boss. It's a boss game now. It seems because it's not just a boss league; it's a boss game with the Maven and all that. So again, having to engage with different types of what I would imagine are boss mechanics that we see elsewhere as like a constant throughout a fight here. I think that is really cool, and it's going to do a lot for a lot of players for mechanics. As somebody who's recently really gotten into bossing due to the gauntlet events and all that, it's very cool.
I think it's good that they're adding more, because I don't think that it's going to be. I think players who don't want to boss will have a great time still, because they can run their Beyond maps all the day. They could do all these other ways of augmenting the non-boss content. So I don't know if I would call it just I think the league and the expansion is very boss-centric, which is really cool. And I think PoE is always best when it has really engaging bossing content, because there is always good mapping content that we can do. It's always been the case in PoE. So when there's good bossing content, that's where PoE is best. Like every Atlas expansion, I think, is the pinnacle of PoE, basically, because that's where we have the most interesting boss fights.
Yeah, I think that's.
We're
really
getting
good
12 of
statement.
them too.
That's great.
It's a ritual then.
Yeah.
Go on, Ziggy. Go. Ziggy, sell us ritual. Okay.
Sell us ritual. I thought ritual
Sell
was
us ritual.
It's not my job. Ritual was
You've
more
had the video for 8 days now, apparently.
like 2 days.
Yeah.
I thought it
27
was more
days.
confusing of the revealed stuff. It took me a bit of time to kind of figure out how it all worked in terms of the multiple rituals per map. There's the taking the ritual monsters and applying them to a new map and stuff like that. But I think it's a relatively simple system now. Actually, I've had some time to sit with it, which makes sense given that it's coming alongside a big expansion. But gameplay wise, looks really satisfying. Like Rise mentioned, it's got kind of boss mechanics going on in an arena, so feels a little breachy, but way more interesting because there's something going on. The area is being used rather than it just being monsters are spawning in this area in an awkward fashion. So I really like that. I think I really noted that they've learned a lot here with the ability to re-roll the store once. You can defer an item for later. That's harvest bleeding through there with saving a craft. That's huge stuff for player mindset, I think. And then I like the stuff where we get a choice and we get to kind of look at a few potential rewards and then choose something. I like that about Heist, for example, being able to look at the cases of items and choose something. So I like that here as well. So I feel there's a lot of learning here from previous mechanics. And that suits because Ritual feels kind of like a cross between 3 or 4 different League mechanics. It feels like Talisman, it feels like Shrines, it feels like Breach. It feels like all of these things combined together.
Parandus, especially since it's such an old league and now you can move them. I remember somebody mentioning that he had a friend who found a headhunter in one of the events in the first day, and they just got so angry that they couldn't get it that they quit. It's no, you can keep moving it, and eventually maybe something.
Yeah, it seems like you can just keep deferring it until you get it. So there's never going to be a situation where it's I can't get that. It's just I'm going to work towards this. That's exciting instead of disappointing.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Noogie.
Just one. I think this is actually the incubator that I can agree with. I had all my, my concerns about Chris's incubators. This is the incubator that I think is great. So that's all.
GGG in mechanics like this, if you think back to something like Delirium, they really love their area denial, and for trying to, keep players on their toes. The explosions in Delirium, the things like volatiles, bearer bombs, if you go to core game mechanics. I really hope that the majority of the area denial in this mechanic is down to the shrine effects, like the rotating laser, and we don't have things like overlapping on death effects in a tiny little arena, because that sounds like it could kind of poison the mechanic a little bit. I'd much rather have the more controlled, more, I guess, tightly designed mechanics of the shrine effects themselves, like the spinning laser, where you're never going to have, a map where you have 100% AoE and tons of pack size just screw you over because there's no way you can avoid an on-death effect in that tiny area.
Yeah, that's a good point to make.
Leaving some of that stuff to RNG. Go ahead, Russ.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I just wonder how you exit, because it seems like it kind of closes in on you, and then you should have an option to just peace out.
Maybe there'll be a button. Maybe there'll be a button like Delirium.
Can't wait to accidentally click it 3 times and exit and then scream. It's like when you've got Cassia and Delirium in the same thing and you click the wrong button and it just it's the freaking worst. Well, Apparently Twitch is
you
dying
were
too.
saying
That's always
Yeah,
good.
it's been dying for me too.
Yeah, I had to refresh the
Nice.
stream a couple of times.
At least it was just during us and not during the like.
Yeah,
the
not during anything
initial
important. That's
announcement.
fine.
Yeah, nothing important.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's good. Good timing.
So that was one thing I wasn't 100% on. Maybe one of you guys got it, probably Ziggy. When it comes to like the carrying monsters over to future ritual thing, like how exactly does that work?
Yeah, okay, so this is one like I took a bit of time to understand and asked Chris about. So you do a ritual, and then at some point you'll find an item. Maybe you purchase it from the store. I imagine you purchase it from the store. It seems like everything comes from it. So you'll get an item. It's like a little, I guess, like the bestiary things. You can put a beast in it. In this case, though, you complete a ritual, and you're like, that was a spicy ritual. So you use the item on the shrine, and it captures all the like souls of the monsters, and then you put that in alongside a map, like a fragment, and all the rituals in that next map will have all of the monsters, including any bosses and stuff, applied to every single ritual in that map. So you can apply you can put 4 of those in a map. So you could capture several maps worth of rituals and then slap them in for a super mega ritual map. Like that seems like a huge amount. Like if you're adding like 40, 50, 60 extra monsters from 4 of those, that's like a few hundred extra monsters for each ritual in the map, plus maybe like several bosses if you've taken them from several maps. That's like omega juice.
Wonder if it works with the Yond on top. Like if it spawns like killing the ritual twice, does it give you twice?
They
the
mentioned that somewhere, actually, specifically. So I think so, yeah. Like if you have other things on the map that benefit from killing extra monsters in the map, like they specifically mentioned Beyond and Delirium, I think. So yes, it does affect those.
Oh
It's pretty
jeez.
spicy.
That would be
Yeah,
crazy.
there's some juice here. That's for sure.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the way that it works is there'll be multiple rituals in each area, and it's like the first one will be easy, and then the second one like brings them all back, and then the third one brings them all back again. So it's like it gets progressively harder the further through.
Yeah, they like roll up like a snowball gathering extra monsters.
So the
Yeah.
first one might not be
Oh.
like worth it XP wise. The second one is even better, and the third one is crazy.
Yeah,
And that's
especially-
good. That would be great for the 100 race, for instance.
This is
going like
This is a
risk
little out
reward.
of this is a little out of left field, but I'm curious what happens if you're in a party in a map with someone and they start a ritual and you're not in it. Do you get like can you keep doing the map and they just can't come out and join you, or do you get ported to them, or what?
Good question.
Yeah.
They get frozen in time and just can't move until you finish the ritual.
And if you can keep doing the map,
That'd
can
be
you then
cool.
go activate the second ritual before the first one is finished, and then someone else activates the? I don't know. This is not stuff we have the answer to.
Fortunately, no one ever plays in parties in Path of Exile, so it won't affect me.
I do. I play with Amy for league start. We'll find out whether it's super awkward or
Well, not
or
anymore.
roll out.
Fun is over.
Oh. Yeah, they did say only the instance owner can like do
Get
the
rewards.
ritual stuff or get
Mm.
rewards, so that might extend to activating them as well to stop you from getting trolled by a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds. It probably won't be that as big of a deal as we're making it out to be. Does anyone have anything else on a certain ritual? Or should we get into Harvest and Heist going for?
Yeah, they mentioned you pay like 20% of the cost of the item to defer it. But I also caught that it will be cheaper later. So I think the deferred
Yes.
cost is like effectively like you're paying. It's like rent to
Subtracted
own.
off it kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
monthly
So I think you're like
installments kind of
paying it
thing.
off in installments
Yeah.
effectively. So it'll get easier and easier to afford it, even without like omega juicing your maps. So that seems like a really good system.
It's probably going to
One
be a
thing
little
that
bit
I-
more expensive, but yeah.
Yeah, there might be like a little bit of lost stuff there. There has to be some sort of opportunity cost probably. If that makes
One
sense.
thing I could see being kind of funny with that kind of system is like, let's say that day one you saw that big ticket like a mirror or a headhunter or something. So like, okay, I'm going to refer this. But if it's something which takes you like thousands of maps to buy it, you'll start running into more things you're deferring. So I really like this idea of someone just having like, I've got these 30 different items I can't afford, and they're just like they're trying to carry each like entire screen across every time.
Oh, I wonder if they actually like let you actually do that.
Defer
they
more
will.
than one
Instead
thing,
of-
you mean?
Yeah, well, maybe one thing's a little limited, but like 3 or 5 as a maximum of things that you can move around.
Wait, what
You might
happens
have
if
an
you
issue
defer
where you need to
something?
like
and you forget later on, does it keep like if you don't see it, could you miss out and it
You
just
probably would.
disappears forever?
Yeah,
Probably
it'll
use
only defer for one ritual, I think.
Oh.
So yeah.
Should they have like maybe
map.
a just a little note here, just maybe a little border that this has been previously deferred, just being like, hey,
Yeah.
remember that thing
funny
up
when
there?
people forget their mirror.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. They probably should have like a
Yeah.
custom border for stuff that you've saved before. Just like, hey,
Or-
you
yeah.
thought this was good last time, maybe you should keep this, you know?
Or like a little check thing that just keeps doing it every single time. I don't know.
You know what they could do?
It can't be
They
that
could get-
important an item if you forget.
No, they could get
Ooh.
Clippy, like from old Microsoft Clippy could pop up and just be like, hey, by the way, there's a few good items. You should probably defer the following. And if you close in like, hey, just so you know, dude, you left a pretty good 10 chaos item in there.
See, I was a little bit surprised about the amount of items that they were displaying because currency and some of the smaller stuff you can recognize immediately. But then there were a lot of items where you're just like, I have to look over every single thing every time, multiple times per map. Like at a certain stage in POE, that's more loot than I'm going to be seeing in like 20 maps combined, because you just don't pick anything up. So if the loot is like entirely randomized, might get a little tedious, which sounds weird to complain about getting more stuff, but
Well, the problem is you can't filter it. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
If you get a ton of drops
Mm-hmm.
from the end of an incursion or something, you don't see 90% of the garbage. But here you have to see the garbage. You can't filter it.
Yeah, that's the biggest potential risk of this league, I think, is that people won't want to stand around looking at every item in their ritual store. That's why I asked about whether it was using the new rare generation system to gauge like how worth it will be to look at these items. Like if they're all like really high quality, then that will certainly help. Like if you actually want to look through them. But yeah, I definitely think there might be a point where you just like, I'm not going to bother looking at the like quite clearly this is a rare item. I'm just going to look at the influence or whatnot.
What if they like separated it out into little tabs at the top? This is probably something they could never do at this point. But if it like goes core, you have a currency one and a rare item one. You can just click on one. If you're interested in rare items, you go to the rare item tab. Otherwise, you ignore it.
Give us our stash tab features in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
like a
that's how
WoW
Chris could
inventory item.
monetize the league mechanic. There we go, Chris, if you're listening. For just
Oh,
$10 dues, you can have smart filtering
Oh no.
on the ritual window.
that was my favorite thing from the Q&A when Chris started sweating about the tab question. It's like, well, am I going to cost myself millions of dollars here potentially? I'm like, we're not going to release a tab, or maybe.
I don't think
That's
I don't think there's like much that they could make a tab out of for ritual. It's like literally just one item that you would actually get from the league and put in a stash.
They've been a lot better with that, but previously they would always find a way. But now, I think we're on the
We
right
could
track.
release a
Yeah.
headhunter tab, since Ritual is going to be giving us all headhunters. We can have a special tab just to store our Ritual headhunter in. You know?
They specifically mentioned I was going to get a headhunter. I heard them. They said it.
Yeah.
And a mirror, too.
Bex
All of
actually
it.
told me, if you don't get a headhunter or mirror day one of the league, you need to personally email Bex and Chris. That is a bug. Do that while you ask about Alpha. Like, they will really appreciate that.
I thought we
Jesus,
wanted
thank
more
God, Twitch is
guests on the
down.
podcast.
It's fine. Twitch is down. No one's hearing this.
I think like a few people are able to watch the stream at a time or type in chat. Good old Twitch. Like I said, at least it's only on us. I'm glad that it didn't screw with their presentation. Oh, I would have been so bummed for them. They're all so excited to show this off. I've been working on this video for ages.
One thing I will say on that, just to give a little bit of how the sausage is made behind the scenes. So I think chat will appreciate this. Because there was like so much like this cannot go wrong, this has to go right. We had like a system set up where if everything went terribly at GGG, Ziggy had everything on hand so he could restream it. And then we had a system that if everything went terribly with Ziggy, because again, it's Ziggy, then Taki, that's the pecking order, I would then restream everything. So yeah.
Nobody expected Twitch going down. Just
No,
kidding.
we didn't have a
we
plan for
didn't
that.
actually plan for Twitch.
No. It's like
Should have had the
we stream
backup
on
mixer
Facebook or
account
something.
ready to go. Like,
Oh, oh no.
Don't tell him. He doesn't know. It's too late for that.
So Harvest.
Harvest, yeah.
Harvest.
What do you think about that? Because Harvest implementation was like a big deal. We spent like 6 months talking about this on Baeclast. Like, what do you think about the way it's going, Claw?
It was one of the things that somebody mentioned during Baeclast, right? The whole patches of just harvest appearing without having to
Yeah.
manage the garden. It's great, but also in a scary way where I read some of the mods because you never know what kind of garden you're gonna get. I'm sure it's gonna kind of like it's not gonna be entirely random where you've got like 5 tier 4 seeds and you're just like, oh, but I want to change my sockets. I don't want to freaking die 50 times. But yeah, that's the scary part, which also makes it pretty exciting. I mean, that sort of cost to reward ratio can be pretty fun. I mean, I say that, but then I get flashbacks of like Cortex, where it's like, oh, I finally get Cortex, and then it's completely undoable, and they had to modify that in that way. So I hope that it's smart to some degree, but we're gonna have
Just
to wait
clip
and see.
him now, chat, saying that it's fun, so that when he dies to it, you can send him that clip.
Yeah, well,
How many
probably
patches
wouldn't be
did
one
they
clip.
show when they're doing them? 2?
There's choices between
2?
2, but there's multiple of those per grove, it seems. So you'll go in and there might be like 3 patches of 2, and you choose one of each pair.
Okay.
Like there'll be like a blue patch, then like a yellow patch, and was it purple, pink, the other one? Yeah.
I think I'm happy with the information we've gotten so far on the harvest reveal, but I feel like a lot of it is still up in the air. Like the meat and potatoes of how harvest implementation is going to affect the game is how rare are target annuls, how rare are target exalts, do target annuls still exist, how rare are the influence and fracture crafts and all that, and we still don't know anything on that. So like I'm happy that I don't have to meddle around in the garden anymore. I didn't really like that very much, but yeah, we don't really know that much yet, honestly.
Well, that was the first thing that they said, right? That they immediately recognized the power of Harvest. They weren't like, oh, Harvest had a lot of issues. People didn't like the garden. They were like, no, this was first thing, too powerful, way OP. So I do wonder if they're just going to keep it the same way that it was, but now it only spawns 10%. So you get 10% of the stuff.
Well, also, it's worth noting that you only have 10 slots in the Horde crafting station, which I think is a really good change.
Yeah, it's much better.
Because it's quite funny. If you go back to, we did a Baeclast right before, and that was before we knew if Horde crafting was a thing or not. And I think it was actually announced during our Baeclast that the Horde crafting was a thing. And we were like, oh, will you even be able to save them? This will be terrible if we can't save them. Can you imagine? But when we first imagined that, we thought, I think we said, maybe if we could store like 5, that'd be okay, but more than 5 would probably be OP. Like, none of us expected to have like entire stash tabs with hundreds of stored crafts.
Yeah, it was a bit much.
Yeah, I think having 10, I think that's a really good middle ground. Because it's like, it's enough that if you are like, oh, I've got this weapon craft, you can maybe get like 1 or 2 projects, but it won't be a situation of like 50 different projects. You can do everything all at once. One question I had about it is, there's not a stash in the garden, and if like how do we have the Horde crafting stuff saved in our hideout, right? But it's like, how do we actually access it? Because it's like we access gardens randomly, so is it a case of we have to store stuff to the Horde craft and then do in our hideout later, or?
There's a Horde crafting bench in the garden. We saw that briefly as they went out the portal, and then Chris said that you can put a Horde crafting bench in your hideout. And there's no seeds or anything like that anymore to fiddle with because that's all just pre-generated.
There's still the menu thing where you can access from your stash an item if you want to pull it out to craft it. You just can't put it back in like before, same as before.
That's what you're.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So
that was such a good feature. I've completely forgotten that was the thing.
I get very fiddly though with all these random assortment of things though. Having to go to like 3 different stashes where you have all the different items. I don't know. It'll be okay.
For sure.
One thing
I can definitely see that. Yep.
I think I'm starting with simplifying the harvest so much. I'm sort of I don't know. I'm a little disappointed that it's being shoehorned into the harvest mechanic. If it's like that basic, anyways, like and not just spreading the crafting stuff more out on the actual game.
Maybe it's see, because that's what I was thinking too.
I would like that to happen, but I mean, it's fine to get some harvest and some Moshabi. I mean, it's kind of cool, but yeah, I feel like they could have done more with the crafting. Sure.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because like when you think about it realistically, the core of Harvest is gone, right? Like what was Heist? Heist was
Yeah.
supposed to be around and finding thing. Harvest was supposed to be a growing, like this ever expanding
True.
progression that you've got, and they've removed that entirely. So if anything, this stands as like a kind of a proof of concept where they go, okay,
Okay.
this deterministic crafting, this is what we want. We just maybe need to fiddle around with it a little bit more and see how it works in the core game without the other features that a lot of players complain about, being the garden and the progression system and all that. So hopefully, if this goes well, maybe they're going to continue to implement, because I in particular have become a pretty big fan of a form of deterministic crafting, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
I guess
Especially
they
after
did
Hive.
add a little bit with the Echoes of the Atlas, because we get that new orb. That's
Yeah.
sort of a harvest
Yeah.
style crafting orb. So that's kind of
Yeah.
See, but I also wish that they talked a little bit more about like the other rewards from the boss, because getting like randomly getting the orb,
Yeah.
or like it even seemed like to a certain extent that the boss encounter itself was a bit random, because Chris, like the way he put it, I can't quite remember, was like the maybe could get the boss encounter too. So then you maybe get the
Yeah.
boss, maybe, and then you maybe get the orb, maybe, and then maybe the orb does something, maybe, or maybe it's completely useless. Like if you use like another thing, that would be a huge disappointment. If there's nothing along
I
the
think
way. Yeah, there's a
I
lot
think
of
it's being
maybe.
mysterious about the actual Maven fight and how it happened.
Maybe.
Like I think that's just kind of like more spoiler territory than anything. Maybe.
Mm.
Yeah,
Maybe.
potentially. Well, they did say that the player base is going to figure it out, so there should be some sort of system there to reach that point somewhat deterministically. Because that's like the best and the worst thing about Conquerors for me right now, where it's so consistent to the point of being boring and repetitive, like because we've had it around for a while now. And I was expecting them to adjust it a little bit. They did say that they're going to be, I guess they didn't quite say rework, but they're going to be adjusting it in the future, but they're doing nothing now. So I hope that the system isn't nearly as maybe direct. Like I understand that that makes it easier to understand long term, but yeah, it does get a little bit repetitive with like the low level conquer and then again and again and again and again.
I
And
mean,
then you
the
can't
problem
scale
with
it back either.
I know fully what you mean. The problem with that is because you have, like with Conquerors, you had to do Conquerors to progress your Atlas. Having it on bad RNG could completely brick your Atlas progression. And because
Absolutely.
this is how you progress your Atlas skill tree, it'd be the same kind of, it would be very frustrating if it's just like you got bad RNG and you're like, I haven't been able to get any of my like Legion tree ungraded. So I think it kind of needs to be that semi-deterministic thing. I do agree with you. We said on the last Baeclast, like, you know, Conquerors feels amazing up to that first Cirrus fight, and then like Awaken a 4 to Awaken 8 Cirrus can be a bit of a grind. I think having this system, while PoE can sometimes suffer a bit from like mechanic bloat, having this kind of on top of the Conquerors should hopefully do a really good job of just making that grindy section feel a lot more engaging. Because
Something
it's not that
happening.
Conquerors is bad content, it's just a case of, because
Oh,
it
yeah.
is a cyclical nature, it's just like it can get a bit repetitive. So having more things in there to spice up and spec into how we progress our Atlas, and again, how we said earlier, that maybe I'm working on this region of Watchstones, and while I'm doing that, I'm also progressing something else. I think, depending on how they gel together as systems, it could actually be like a much smoother experience.
Oh,
it will
yeah,
just
for sure.
have to be when we play it.
Like getting RNG'd on Elder or Shaper influence never felt good. Like that was not the sort of thing. And the thing is too that you've got room for, with systems like that, you've got room for just feeling bad about playing the game, because sometimes you genuinely make a mistake. PoE is mostly about making the least mistakes rather than playing perfectly, because you can't play perfectly. You're gonna always make mistakes, especially with the Atlas, which can be such a convoluted thing if you're planning through. And now you don't have the excuse necessarily with the Watchstones where you just go, it does still happen, but you don't have the excuse of going, oh, I just got unlucky. It's like, no, you just planned this poorly. This was on you. So I do appreciate that too.
It'll be interesting seeing how the regret stuff, like, it'll be interesting because it, like, how expensive that'll be, as Chris said, depending on how popular it is to like do certain aggressive respecking and stuff. I definitely had that problem with the early Atlas systems. I mean, it was just like with the shape orbs and everything, where I felt like, oh, I've unlocked my Atlas wrong. I've screwed myself for the like. I specifically remember it was one of the first leagues of we had the Atlas system. I realized that I wanted to change my Atlas, and I calculated how much it would cost me, and I'm like, that is such an excessive cost. I'm just going to have to accept that I've ruined my Atlas effectively for the next 3 months. And that felt so terrible. And I was like so bitter about it. And in reality, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, we're the kind of people who'd be like, my character's 5% behind where it could be. My life is, you know, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. It's a slight inefficiency. But like having the ability to go back and respec is really important.
Yeah. I do actually think you're right with the old Atlas, that it was an insurmountable thing to overcome if you just wanted to have a, because it's not just my build that got ruined back then. It was
every character of that league.
Yeah, but it's like you were denied a sort of mapping playstyle, basically. So it's nice that we don't have that anymore.
I think the preferred map system right now is a fantastic middle ground for both things. Honestly, I was a little skeptical about it initially, but it freaking works wonders. I really like it a lot.
Plays nice with the passive trees being thrown into the Atlas as well. You know, you can prefer a map in a certain region if you want to target Legion, and then just swap it to a different one if you want to target Beyond.
Yep.
Also allows you to tinker a lot. Like try this map, try that map.
No, the only thing that I worry is what Tarky mentioned previously, where it might feel like a too big of an investment cost having to get like your Atlas worked out in a different region. I hope that they have a good system for that, where everything kind of you get access to every like region's progression simultaneously, or at least alongside to some capacity, rather than like you've got one region and now I have to spend all this time to get another region to get it functional or nearly as effective as the previously obtained one.
Do some of them repeat? Do we know? Like the unlocks, the talent trees. Are some of the trees the same on different parts? Or are they always
they're all different
changing?
as far as I'm aware.
Oh,
there will be multiple regions
that
have like Beyond, for example, will be in multiple regions. Not all of
right.
them.
Okay. So it's not just one region with Beyond. There can be multiple. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll have different things with Beyond.
Very interesting.
Maybe.
I mean, it's cool too because it's staying in the game. Like, I wouldn't anticipate that they're going to be like, this is a complete failure, we're removing it. So now that they were kind of swapping maps around on the Atlas and in different regions, now they can do the same thing for swapping around the passives. And I guess you can make it a lot more deterministic, because with the maps, you know, at a certain point it was like, let's just shuffle this around, you know. Well, Desert Springs tier 3 map, let's go. Like, just kill the boss, lol. So that was a little bit much, but now you can be a lot more direct, almost like maybe Xana mods, you know, how you get them every league, and every league you're like, these are the Xana mods that you're going to run. With this, it's going to be like, if you like this region, these are the Atlas, Ascendancy, Echo things that you're going to run. I like that.
One thing that I've learned to really appreciate about Path of Exile, this is going to be such a weird statement to say, is it does a good job of hiding decision paralysis. There's a lot of things that really frustrate me. Like, for example, if you've never played Path of Exile before, you go to make a new character and it doesn't tell you about ascendancies. So you can make the wrong choice and screw up your build. But I've been playing a lot of CRPGs recently, and especially those games where it's like, hi, this is a game you've never played before. I now want you to make a party of 4 characters in the character creation screen where you know nothing and specialize into every single weapon type and equipment type you'll use for the rest of your run. What's that? You've gotten 10 hours in and realize you're screwed? Fuck you, start again. Like, one thing which is quite good about this kind of system is it's introducing all these different things, but because of the way that you'll unlock it, you'll have to spend time with the Atlas system to understand how Atlas and interacting with Blight randomly delve. Like, you have to interact with these mechanics before you then kind of make this thing. You're not choosing at level 1, you don't even know what a Legion is, how I'm speccing my Legion Atlas. And I think that's one thing that's actually quite good about the system.
All I could think of during all of that, Tarky, was how they should take the freaking 10-second clip of Chris Wilson going, oh, in the game of Path of Exile, you can further specialize into an Ascendancy class, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we all know about that. Why don't you just say that at the start of the game? Just like, take that clip and just add it at the start of the game when people are starting, and then everybody knows that you get Ascendancies. I feel like especially since they're so thematic, you know? What is a shadow? I don't care about that. I know what an assassin is. A saboteur, a trickster, I can get an idea of what it is, but a shadow? Come on, man.
And I do go back and forth on that a lot. I've been someone who's been like saying they have to have what they have to have that, they have to have that. But yeah, recently playing a lot of like I got back into Pathfinder Kingmaker recently, and it's like I just want to play a sorcerer, and then like pick your subclass, pick your this, pick your. I'm like, no, just let me understand how the game works. I don't want to make all these decisions at level 1. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, you have to make a decision anyway. But I guess now you would be making 4 decisions rather than 1, because you're picking your class and your ascendancies rather than just your class. But then like getting there and discovering the lab and figuring out that you've got all these options and you know nothing about them because you didn't have access to that information at any point. Like, I don't know, does that feel good? Like, am I actually playing the right thing? Would I have more fun playing a different thing? Do I just level all characters and then check them and then pick one of them? Like, do I look for outside sources? Just alt tab, dude.
I
don't know.
I felt really bad. I remember my ex, she started playing Path of Exile when she got a PlayStation 4. So she was playing on console. And I went, oh, this is really good. She was doing really good progress. And she decided that she wanted to play. It's like she wanted to play Blight or something. I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's cool. You want a shadow? She's like, no. And I'm like, oh, not trickster. You sure you want to keep playing? I think she was like a Templar. I'm like, you sure you want to keep being a Templar? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay.
See what I mean? Especially with like the
that's
gem
not a bad
choices.
thing. You're making out as that's a bad thing.
It is.
No, it's not. You don't need to play the best build to enjoy the game.
No,
I'd
People
say-
play for different reasons, and people play because thematically they like being a guy with no pants. You know, it's okay to like being that guy.
Yeah, but
I
you hit a brick wall
I-
at a certain point.
I
But
do
you're
completely
right.
agree, but it's
because you
just in this case briefly though. Okay, go.
Just because you picked a trickster, you're gonna hit a brick wall in PoE anyways. That's
No,
gonna
just
happen.
because you're trying to play a Blight Templar.
Like you're
least
gonna
pick
do
a witch,
blighting
come
quiz.
on.
Come on.
That kind of blight. Yeah, but then you figure it out. Then you're gonna play a trickster and you figure out it's blight. No, but
Yeah,
like,
'cause she had a boyfriend to tell her.
It is. You don't know if you even like it later on. Anyways, it's a game of experimentation. Just let people
I guess.
experiment.
Guys,
No, I get
Noogie's
that.
just confirmed he's going to be league starting 3.13
Come
Blight
on,
Inquisitor.
I played the game and
Yes.
rerolled enough.
Melee
No,
Noogie is
spellcaster
not-
hybrid.
Officially, Noogie, you're not allowed to look at the ascendancies, and you have to pick your class and build. And you can't look at the changes. See how you feel.
Okay. I've league started as EA in Metamorph, and I league started as Hexblast. What was it? What's that like? Yeah, this league in Heist. I think I try enough things without knowing where it leads me and whether it's good enough. I have
And you felt-
experience.
You felt good about the EA, huh?
No, but I'm glad I'm glad I'm a type of person that can do that and feel comfortable with making a
That's
wrong
good.
choice. That's nice.
I'm glad that you're comfortable making wrong choices as well.
Yeah.
Since we are talking about ascendancies, let's talk about ascendancies a bit and we'll come back to Heist. So obviously these ascendancy works is like a massive deal. One thing I just will say quickly to the chat, they're doing 3 big reworks and then we're seeing numerical changes to the other 16. Don't expect like they're gonna rework every single ascendancy, like, because I'm sure it'll be a case of they'll improve everyone to some extent, but like don't then be like, hey Bex, you told me that you were going to be completely redesigning my favorite build archetype to suit exactly what I wanted, and you've only buffed it by 5%. This is awful.
Yeah, that would really suck. No, I think people are going to be pretty like fair about this. The way they announced it and everything, I thought that made a lot of sense. And I don't know. Again, I am still in shock that they're doing this now and to this extent and all this sort of stuff. I thought POE skill tree, they've always fixed stuff with skill trees. I really like that a lot. I thought the ascendancies, like granted, there are more popular ascendancies than other ones. You know, all of that is always going to happen. But like, I didn't look at any of the POE ascendancies. Some of them weren't interesting thematically, but I didn't look at any of them. And it's like, people aren't playing this because it's weak. They're not playing it because there's something slightly stronger, which is the sort of stuff that needs to be addressed. But then, yeah, for them to just like really go in and switch everything up on such a big expansion, I love it because that's always the most fun, you know. Even figuring out the Watchstones and the Conquerors and everything with Metamorph last year, man, that made the game so freaking fun. So then now to layer that with like all these other things, yeah, I had a good feeling, but I'm surprised even more.
Because your build is the thing you're most personally attached to, you know, like the Atlas progression and all that is really neat to get into, but really like 50, 60, 70% of your time spent digging around in the nuts and bolts of the game is in relation to your character and your build. So those changes are always the most welcome.
I just remembered how they were mentioning all the skills that they're buffing, and they were like crackling lance, firestorm, like all the. It's like, oh, so everything from last patch. Interesting.
I'm glad that they are willing to immediately go back to something that didn't work, and you know they're not just like sitting on it like they sort of did with bow changes to some degree.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, we see.
I definitely overvalued those skills.
It's true.
Stuff as well.
I'm really excited actually to see the ballista changes because I've wanted to play one and I haven't really been able to justify it since then. So I might be league starting ballistas.
Several ballista changes.
They said
Can they not
seismic
get stunned?
trap, so I'm going to use my previous advice and say confirmed full trap rework. The trap support gems finally going to be good again. Please.
I
mean, they did
introduce trap though with this mechanic. I mean, doing a full cooldown based trapper when the league mechanic is in this tiny little area where you can just throw all your traps down and murder things as they spawn. That sounds fun.
Didn't they want the more unique traps to be more powerful as well? Like they talked about that at some point.
Yeah, the cooldown based ones.
Yeah. So maybe there's going to be more of an emphasis on making those the key cornerstones of the builds, and then the trap support more like fluff.
That'd be nice. It would be. I don't want to go into trap class because chat always gets angry whenever I talk about traps. There's always that comment like, "Oh, targets want traps again." It would be good if they made the trap support gem not terrible, but no, if they can make the big like cooldown trap play style feel good, that'd be really nice. So hopefully there's some spicy stuff in there. That's one thing I want to ask you guys. So we know there's going to be 40 confirmed, and Chris mentioned 10 of them. What is one skill you hope is in that 30 that I haven't mentioned? Like, what's that one skill you're like, oh, I can't wait to play this, or I want to.
Triple the hitbox size for Spectral Shield Throw. Please, I've been saying it for years. Please. The hitbox feels so bad. It's like the numbers are pretty good at this point. You can actually make Spectral Shield Throw work just fine, but it feels so bad to boss with because any boss that's like smaller than, I don't know, a wall is annoying as hell to hit.
Agreed.
I get that. But can't you, well, kind of to a certain extent, because the main shield wouldn't, but it still chains. Can't you make it like pretty insane with Deadeye now?
The Deadeye chain
off the walls.
Yeah. I was
Just
thinking
hit,
that.
you have to hit, just hit the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it works. And it
But then
spreads
you have-
the things every time.
Then you have the Shaper fight and there's no walls. And what do you do, man?
Oh.
You put Frostwall down.
Bring back Frostwall or the Glacial Hammer, you know, where you would make the circle around it and it would create walls and you could just chain a million times. That'd be cool. I'm probably most excited about Firestorm, actually, oddly enough.
Yes.
I was really looking forward to Firestorm, and especially I'm hoping that they're going to put more emphasis on the like meteor ignite version of just like a big meaty boom. Yeah. I would really like to see that work because that from the get-go, from like a numerical point of view, was just kind of disappointing to me.
It'd be nice if they work together so that both hitting the big one and somehow getting the smaller things to hit in conjunction would be like what you're aiming for. So you don't like, you know, maybe you could create a debuff if you hit the small ones on top, and then the next meteor would be even bigger.
It's still kind of nice because generally ignite builds due to like the single meaty hit suffer a lot from lack of leech and general sustain mechanics. So still the smaller hits emphasize that a little bit, and it's nice, or help with that a little bit. So yeah.
I know GGG
fix arc. Sorry.
I know GGG disowned Ice Trap and forgot it exists, but I'd like to see Ice Trap get some help. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
What skill is
Yeah.
always satisfying, looking and feeling and sounding.
It's funny you mentioned, I was just going to say that, like, while I have been begging for Trap Quality of Life for a really long time, they did a really good job with that, like, secondary skill effect that you talked about, Nuggy, with Lightning Trap and Fire Trap, where they play off themselves really well, because Lightning Trap has the thing where it gets increased crit chance against shocked enemies, so, like, the subsequent later ones. Then Fire Trap, like, it lays Burning Ground, it does bonus damage against burning enemies. It'd be cool if they had, like, more skills which, like, had that interplay with themselves, so, like, yeah. The Firestorm maybe like does a massive test, like massive, like it puts the ignite, and then if the smaller one hits the ignite, then it like chunks the damage or something. Like having more skills like that would be cool.
I mean, we have every skill like that now, right? Because of the new support gem.
True.
Yeah, Trinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone want to talk about Trinity or Hydrosphere?
I mean, I didn't fully get how it worked, but you need to use different elements to get the extra effect. More than that, I was kind of distracted at the time, but it just looked really, because I was just looking at the screen. It looked really cool, so I didn't really hear what was going on. I just thought you needed to do like multiple elements, and it would trigger like a bigger buff.
Casting
some kind of try Ellie hit seems like it'd be neat.
Yeah,
like that, Ellie Equilibrium.
Yeah, dealing damage with like other elements builds up charges, which boosts everything. So you want to like try and rotate between them and keep them all going as well, because if you stop using them, you'll lose charges. For some of those. So it looks like it'll pair pretty nicely with some of the new elemental stuff potentially. I don't know whether you want to go 3 element stuff or just 2 elements, whether that will be good enough and worth using. It looks really cool though.
I copy pasted the info if someone else wants to read that, because I can't talk too much.
I can't stop thinking about the Winter Orb.
I can read
Winter
that.
Wild Strike.
The Trinity support gem is designed to support builds that deal multiple types of elemental damage. While Trinity supports your skill, any hits that deal damage with a specific element will build resonance with the other 2 elements. The more resonance you have of every element, the more damage the Trinity support provides. When you have high resonance with all 3 elements, Trinity also grants elemental penetration. Yeah.
Seems like it could be interesting.
Wait, can you do 2 elements? So is it based? So I'm assuming, is it based on the tagline of the skills, or is it based on what actual damage they do?
Hit that deals damage with a specific element. So it sounds like damage that they do.
Yeah, I think it's the highest element is the one that's determined, like the one that dealt the most damage. I feel like I remember seeing that somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can only get 1. So you would have to cycle different skills for it to function, because it would only pick the higher one to give.
Yeah, unless with the exception maybe being like lightning damage that has a high range, where you might be like one hit is more cold damage and the other hit is more lightning damage. Automatically, kind of the variance might help you there.
Oh, true. Smart.
Interesting. It's interesting that it's more damage and pen too. It's like, I wonder.
Yeah.
Because did they remove the 0 resistance thing from Inquisitor?
Yeah.
Oh god, there was so much in the video. I don't have that in my head.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Because I thought this was like kind of a response to that, but then I wasn't 100% sure. It's still interesting the increased crit and everything.
to it with the strength int.
I don't know if they
remember the other
hovered over
one.
that specific node. I copy pasted from the transcript the Inquis stuff into the Discord. if you want.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's still there.
Right.
They were just
So
showing
they
the
just
stuff that had
changed the
changed
lead
a
up.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the one before
Makes
is
sense.
the strength int one, I think, right? Crit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't show that it was modified in the thing that you posted, so.
Highest path
Makes
is really interesting. It applies to life and energy shield at the
Yeah, that's-
same time.
It's kind of
I
spicy.
love that. I was always
so
playing the
great.
hybrid.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, the hybrid like triple regeneration with MOM too and everything.
So hard to make
That's
work.
so much fun. It feels so tanky, even though it doesn't have any mitigation. It's just all sustain, but then it feels so nice. Can't wait to do it. It's
Okay,
nice.
that's
You'll
an
be able to do
interesting
EB.
question. Just so of the 3 that's been revealed, which ones are you all most excited for? So you most excited for the Inquisitor Rise?
Ooh, nah, I gotta go with Elementalist. I'm sorry. I've been on an Elementalist roll. In all the events, I was playing Elementalist. You know, I'm an elementalist main. I gotta, yeah. Anything elementalist ever, I'm gonna go with. I really like Templar, and I've definitely been playing the most Templar, but I also hate the way it looks. So bring Witch back, man, as a non-necromancer form.
Now,
Is there any particular part of Elementus, just the whole package that has you excited?
Pretty much the whole thing. I mean, I didn't look over it like super well. There was just way too much happening at the time. But even like the golem respawning thing, which really stood out, was kind of nice because, especially when I was playing Elementalist, everybody was consistently just all the way through. Your golems will die. Your golems will die, and they weren't dying damn much. But I did have to put in like 2 4-socket setups, and I could have had a little bit more. And yeah, I feel like that's something that would have worked with PoE 2, with like the socket system where all the gems could have its own thing. But now it definitely had a problem where now you kind of have to pace yourself during combat. Maybe, you know, let a golem die on purpose to then like be able to back out and keep fighting rather than waiting for some forms of regeneration to kick in. It's really yeah, it's looking fun.
I think it's a really clever way to address it too, because like the potential for your golems to die is meant to be, you know, something you have to consider as an elementalist. You know, they're not supposed to be just like buffs you get to switch on and never think about again. They do, I think, want you to have to invest in like their own meat shield support them or something. And so this still leaves you with that window of weakness if you take on content that's too rippy for you and your golems all die. You have 4 seconds where you're not really much of a character anymore, and you might fall over if you're not careful, but it's not, you know, you don't have to go through the really long cast animations of getting them back and all that. So it leaves in the weakness in the Ascendancy that you have to build around without making it too much of a headache.
Oh yeah, especially annoying when whatever you would have like not enough mana to cast them too. It's like, oh, have to turn off the aura to cast the golem, and then the keybinds and the worst.
What about you, Octavian? Of what we've seen, what are you most excited for?
Deadeye, I guess. I mean, the flashiness of having Mirage turret guys follow you around is just badass in its own right. And then, like, there's some amount of defensive layer in Deadeye now, in the form of the what was it? Gale Force. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Wind Ward, I think, is the name of the Ascendancy.
Yeah, it's like a Kintsugi effect, kind of.
And it synergizes as well with Wind Dancer and Kintsugi on the tree and the itemization and all that. I think it's a good defensive layer for Deadeye. Deadeye isn't meant to be super tanky. You know, I'm not saying that she needs to be on the level of Gladiator or Jug. That's just not in the identity of the class. But I think it's a good way to work in enough survivability that it's more viable without actually just diluting the identity.
Did we see what the max stack of Gale Force is?
I have it up right now. I can.
Because
the text is small.
I know it's 3% more reduction per, but I don't know if it's like, have we got 10? Have we got 4?
Chat's saying 10.
Hoping 10.
I mean, that's
Nice.
insane. That's 30%. And then you
Well,
layer
they-
that with
you
Wind
lose
Dancer
them.
and Kintsugi. Like, you
And
get like
you
reductions.
lose them one
but-
hit as well, so they're really
Yes.
good against dots.
Yeah.
You know, you have Kintsugi, Wind Dancer, and Wind Ward on a Deadeye, and you can probably just like run through something like Lab Traps without even seeing your health move.
I'm looking at the occultists. They did something interesting. So instead of
showed
it
that.
being chaos damage over time multiplier and cold damage over time multiplier, it's now, and it was 20%. Now it's 15% more chaos damage over time, chaos damage, and 15% more cold damage. But then also, Profane Bloom is 40% chance to explode now instead of 25.
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. But then they didn't really change anything else, as far as I know.
It changed pathing in the area at all?
Yeah, didn't they split it up? Don't you? I don't think you have to
Oh,
run
no,
through
they
the
did split it
curse
up. Yeah, you're right.
4-pointer.
Profane Bloom and Malediction is split up.
Oh, that's big, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that is big, actually.
What the hell does the text? Sorry, this is on Deadeye still. I'm confused by this wording. What does marks you inflict are not removed from dying enemies mean? Does that mean corpses are still marked? Because it's dying enemies.
It is weird wording, but yeah, I assume it's just corpses, right? I had noticed that too, and I'm like, and they didn't mention it; it just showed it. And I was like,
The reason why that matters is because enemies near your marked enemies deal less, or you take less damage from enemies near your marked enemies. So if you could consistently mark a trash monster next to like a boss or something, then you could effectively make that boss deal 25% less damage if the corpse remains marked.
Oh, it's a lot.
And combine that with Wind Ward, and you're actually pretty darn tanky in a boss fight. But I don't know how you would set that up.
Is that Deadeye?
That's Deadeye, yeah. That's focal point.
Nice.
I mean, wouldn't you just mark the boss? And
Yeah,
the
it's
boss-
Marking
Yeah,
the
should
boss-
include.
so the boss is so it's specifically other enemies near your marked enemy deal less damage.
Oh.
Say other does
So
it.
marking the boss doesn't work. You have to mark
Oh,
something
weird.
next to the boss.
Hmm.
Just twin every map you run, dude.
Perfect.
Yes.
I mean, you probably want to mark the boss anyway.
Bald
I mean,
Rage. There you go.
No, we're fighting 10 map bosses at a time, so you just mark one of the map
True.
bosses and the other 9 are
Oh.
easy.
All other 9.
Actually, really good for that.
And
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
actually, if you get a mark, a trigger like an Assassin's Mark ring or something, that's going to trigger on every rare monster that you hit in a map. So that means that anything that isn't a rare monster, so long as there's a rare monster nearby, is dealing less damage. Like, that's not a bad defensive layer.
Whoa, what did they do with Hierophant? So the old, now it's Conviction of Power? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that one I heard was good.
Where's that?
It was
What's that
changed. Oh yeah, it is Conviction of Power. It was the like gain charges. Now it's plus
What?
4 to minimum endurance charges, plus 4 to minimum power charges, plus 1 to 1, plus 1 maximum charges, power charges, and maximum endurance charges.
So you
It's
just
like you've always,
Minimum?
is it just you have 4 power and endurance charges then? Is that
yeah,
Insane.
essentially what it says?
And an extra
But you
that
can't
you could generate.
and an extra, yeah. So you generate an extra 5th one or however many more you want. Pretty nuts.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like they changed anything else from the looks of it.
Was Ritual of Awakening 3% more per summon totem before? Because it's 5% on
Oh,
this.
I think so, yeah.
So
Mhm,
they
I
buffed,
think you're
they
right.
buffed the damage a little bit as well, if I'm remembering that right.
Have a link to what you're
Mhm.
seeing all day?
For sure.
It's really good.
Oh no, Arcane Blessing. Did that always have effective Arcane Surge on you? On it?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, effective arcane search it didn't. No, absolutely not.
That's
Whoa.
actually really good. Like that's really good for like Archmage builds. If you have a level 20 Arcane Cloak with a level 20 Arcane Surge or something, that's a lot of mana recovery.
Oh, but did they
50, that is a lot.
wait? Did they? So confused. Yeah, they switched them in order. They switched the order of them. Illuminated Devotion and Arcane Blessing. They're switched around.
And you got to spend more points for Ailment of Immunity now, I guess.
No less.
Oh no, ailment immunities move to the other node.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So that's still 4 points down. Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So you get all the good stuff at the illuminated devotion.
Interesting. They switched the nodes around, but then they moved the points from the node to the other one. Like what? So weird. Pretty cool. I mean, I guess the early
there
Arcane
always
Surge
100%
generation makes
chance?
sense.
Is there always a 100% chance to gain hitting anything?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, but the Arcane Surge that you get on hit baseline is a level 1 Arcane Surge.
Yeah. Curious.
Why don't they show the other ascendancies on the announcement? It's just the non-video ones. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Well, also,
There's
I
like
mean,
so-
so they can post like one a day, farm that juicy Reddit karma, you know.
I guess we see them in the video.
True. So now that you're, has he got? Can you hear us again? We'll give him a second. Now that you're back, Ziggy, of the ascendancies we've seen so far, which one are you most excited for?
My heart says Deadeye, but my brain says Elementalist. I think Elementalist looks like the nicest from my brief glance. Like the changes to it feel the best. I think they've really nailed Elementalist down. I'm pretty excited to see like the more battle magey theme being explored with Inquisitor, and I'm pretty impressed that overall that all 3 of them that they've shown look really good. I don't feel like there's any real duds there. And Deadeye is maybe a little messy, but my heart still says Deadeye. Yeah, probably Elementalist is the winner of the 3 though. If I'm being realistic.
Oh, I'm guessing we can say this. Otherwise, Bex just made a terrible mistake. But she said we'll reveal all Ascendancy classes on the 11th, day before patch notes.
Nice. Spicy.
Something to look forward to, chat. So unless anyone has anything they want to say more on the Ascendancy thing, should we circle backwards to Heist being implemented core, because that's quite a big deal.
Yeah.
So Heist and the community reaction has been somewhat mixed, I think it's fair to say. I've been pretty happy with Heist. I think the way they're introducing Heist is pretty good. They're reducing some of the like initial setup grind. What do you guys think? Did you want more changes, or are you happy with like the way they're going for it? Rise, say what you want. Go on.
I'll
can
never
see
be
your
happy
mouth
about
going.
Heist. I'll never be happy about Heist. I'm sorry. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Especially now that we're implementing deterministic crafting, having this system that essentially accomplishes opening doors and dropping a lot of currency that you can then like randomly click on your items to maybe have a form of a crafting system that doesn't work. I am just not a fan. I understand that some people like it gameplay wise, but I think it was stripped off of a lot of the elements that actually made it initially interesting and ended up being a league that is something completely different than what we were initially told it's going to be. So, yep. Any Heist likers, maybe?
I like
No,
Heist.
I
think Heist is
actually
neat.
agree with you on that point.
Oh no.
I kind of agree. They have like the thing is Heist had really good itemization at the reward system. At the end reward system at least, I found very appealing. The boxes is just I don't know, I've never been a box fan of like clicking all the boxes to get all the loot explosions nonstop. It's been like that for a long time, so it's like that's whatever. But the reward system was really good. But yeah, definitely hope for more out of the actual gameplay mechanics out of the league.
See, that's my big problem. It's the same problem that I kind of had with Delirium, where cluster jewels make a lot of sense, but they're not essential to Delirium as a mechanic. The same way Heist is so good with the gems, and it's so good with the experiment of like the smart loot and all of that. I think it is so good. It's information that we can take into the future to develop a system that is just like a direct improvement over what we currently have. Same way they did with like what Parandus was, and now what we're going to be getting with Ritual. I just don't understand why it's going core. I just don't get it. Like, what is so essential about it? I mean, the voice acting is really cool too. Thematically, it makes a lot of sense, and I think the story is going to be like a nice progression and something else to have in the game. But it just outside of that, I don't see how it serves a purpose, and I think we already have enough interesting, cool, and progressive systems in the game to not have to.
I think
do this
ultimately the
on
fact
top
that
of
it's
it.
just for a reasonable portion of people, like physically fun content to play is enough for it to go core. And I think ultimately that's what it
Right.
comes down to. Like I
Yeah.
had fun with Heist. I think like the implementation is reasonable. I think I'm always going to feel like Heist could have done a lot more, or a lot more could be changed and explored with Heist mechanics wise in terms of like gameplay mechanics and things like that. And the loot, some of the new loot that it implemented was really good as well. But I do think I always will feel like there's more that can be done with Heist. So maybe it's something GGG can circle back to in the future. But I think at the very least, Heist is going to be like a pretty important part, like thing for Path of Exile historically moving forwards. Like a lot, I think, is going to be learned from this and
Oh yeah.
implemented into future mechanics. It felt like such a testing grounds, experimental league in a way. It felt super experimental.
I think it's
See, but
also
then-
it's one of gone.
I just think that exactly it makes a lot of sense exactly what Ziggy said, and that seems like what they're going for with Harvest, and it might work and it might not, but the approach is so much more sensible than what I think we're getting out of the Heist implementation.
I was
Can you
gonna say I
sum
think
up
it really
exactly
depends
how
on
they're going to implement. Just to refresh.
Sorry?
Could you like exactly how they're implementing?
Well,
Heist.
from what they said, it's like the same thing.
You start
Except
getting
the quest.
markers and contracts in X6, and you heist as normal with a reduced rate of marker and contract drops, I'd imagine. And the way that unique contracts work is you will always be guaranteed to get the next viable unique contract in the chain when you find the stashes and maps.
And some quality of life stuff like markers will drop in greater piles and things like that. So
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
some of the like some like rebalancey sort of stuff that I think makes it a little bit nicer, but nothing like huge. You know, like it's not like Harvest where they've like completely changed the mechanic effectively.
What
So
I
we
was
could
gonna
run
say.
as much as now? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
That's my only question.
What was the question?
No,
Run
if
heist
you
to
were
the same amount.
if you were buying markers off other people and everything, and like if you were buying all the contracts and all the blueprints and all that stuff, because that's all tradable, right?
Yeah.
In theory, you could run it as much now, but you'll be seeing it much less because it's like
Okay.
you'll have a chance to see it from Act 6 onwards.
Mm.
And that's what I was gonna say. I think in a way, I feel like Heist could have almost been a synthesis if it was a case of they were like, okay, we're going to introduce it, but if they let it sit out for a whole league, because I do think there's fundamentally something. I know people like complain about doors, but I do think there is something quite fun about that idea of I'm running through a supermarket, just grabbing stuff off the shelves and trying to get out in time. And if that's like a gameplay system where like you're only getting that experience maybe like once a day or twice a day, I think that's a really fun little addition. So it depends on like the scarcity and like how regularly you're having that kind of experience. So yeah, we'll just have to see how regular it's going to be going forward, and also if it's going to be a case of will there still be like degenerate issues with it in the extreme cases of the people like playing in Trade League with all this currency set up, where there's like forever blueprinting and like that's where the nitty gritty. But from like an SSF point of view, if it's something that I'm interacting with a couple of times a day, and as long as I'm still getting like decent access to like replica uniques, and because that's really cool content, I think it's a really good addition to the game. But it just depends on how often we're doing it.
I think you have a good point there. Like the escape sequence from a heist and how hectic that can be is fun. I mean, fun is subjective, so I can't speak for everyone saying that, but in my opinion, that's fun. I like the tension of, you know, a big pack of mobs assembling behind a door as it slowly opens, and then I have to blast my way through all of it and then get to the next one. What kills Heist and what kills the sense of tension in it is the entry sequence, mainly because there's 3 or 4 doors, depending on the size of the heist and the way in, that just feel like they're there to waste time and nothing else. The doors to the sides, those are guarding rewards, and so it makes sense to have those locked, and there's monsters behind them. And the doors on the way out, they're trying to stop you from getting out. It makes sense to have them locked, and there's monsters behind them. But the ones on the way in, just they don't serve a gameplay purpose, in my opinion. They're just there as set dressing.
See, but I have the same problem because from a gameplay point of view, I totally agree with you, Tarky and Octavian. It's, I mean, subjectively, but it's enjoyable. Like, it's just fun. But then a lot of the fun for me and personally comes from the difficulty. And the difficulty can be entirely bypassed due to just not picking up the treasure at the end either. So, and it's not like the treasure is a particularly big deal. It might be a bigger deal now, but especially on Trade League, I mean, there are much better ways that you can specialize into obtaining currency that then you can purchase the things that you might need from a heist. So then why would you spend all this time doing this? I mean, if it's just enjoyable, yeah, it's still really good XP exiting. So that can be a very big factor that you can just run heist for XP because they are incredibly rewarding in that regard. But then how many people really like, I'm just going to get level 100 and I'm going to do it through heist because it's the most efficient way. I don't know. I mean, it definitely happens, but I just don't know to what extent.
I also think one thing that's worth mentioning, because they said they were going to like smooth line the rogue leveling system a little bit. I think that while PoE does sometimes struggle with mechanic bloat, I don't think there's anything wrong with just having niche novelty content for the sake of niche novelty if you enjoy that. And I think that's where I think Heist can do quite well. It's not going to be a situation where it's not like unlocking your mastercrafts every league where you feel like I have to do this every league, or like delve progression, or like it really is just a side thing where you get currency.
Yeah, it's fun content that's not going to get in our way, I think, ultimately, is why it's fine for it to be implemented, like, as a core mechanic. And, when we're talking about the topic of, like, things, there being too much stuff in Path of Exile, potentially, I don't think it's going to get in our way at all. It's like a side dungeon you can do.
See, I do think that it can get in the way, though, because there are other ways in the game that you can implement the systems that I find quite good in Heist, which is the gems, the replicas, and the smart system, right? Because I do feel like whatever you think about Delirium, it most definitely gets in the way of obtaining cluster jewels, and there could be other ways through the game that you wouldn't have to engage with a system where cluster jewels make a lot of sense. So now, through implementation of Heist, we can't implement this, or eventually it needs to be implemented, or could be implemented in like some other form, rather than it being a necessity from the get-go, the same way something like synthesis bosses were, where it just made sense and it took time for it to end up being implemented, right?
I agree with you on like cluster jewels because they feel like such a fundamental like character mechanic. But I don't think I feel the same about like any of the heist stuff. Like some of that stuff is really good, and I like all that loot a lot, but it doesn't feel as character fundamental as cluster jewels.
I mean, certain gem qualities can be character defining. Straight up.
Yeah, totally.
It's almost like
random unique,
a build creation situation rather than like something that adds to your build. You create around it. So I can see it in that way how it works. Yeah.
I think it's one thing. If I that's a bit problematic for me is if it's the best XP. You know that I guess you can't. If you're in a position where you would like to XP your character and you know that this method is 30, 40, 50% better than anything else I could do, it is kind of a big deal saying, no, I'm not going to do heist. Whether you like it or not.
We were just talking about ritual though, potentially being insane for XP though. So
yeah, hopefully, I mean, I hope that's going to trump it for. Yeah. I really hope so. I think that's important.
See, but that's kind of what Harvest I think really succeeded in, where Harvest was, like it or not, it was very game defining. And I think that's what League mechanics should be at its core, where it's this thing that changed Path of Exile drastically for the entirety of the 3 months. You might like it, you might not like it, if you're just bypassing it completely. Okay, that's up to you. But the game is very, very different. And I hope that Ritual is the same way, where it's just completely busted, but for 3 months. And then we move on. The same way Maven was or anything. I think those systems are a lot more thought out. And there is opportunity for something like that where, it's just nuts. I would love that. Overload of fun.
I do think for Harvest League that for any League mechanic that it's important that it actually has good XP. I think it was terrible in the beginning when it didn't have any XP because there was no like going in and killing and all that stuff. You felt like if you didn't get anything good out of the heist, you felt like you completely wasted your time because you didn't even get a level.
No, that's fair. I will say though, I'm going back to the harvest thing. I'm pretty pleased with how they were doing the harvest because I was in the crowd. Like I was someone who was really worried about harvest crafting, and it's like how it could change, like just crafting in general going forward. And I do think that for that at least, while like heist, they probably could have done more. I'm a lot happier with that than I thought I would because I was really dreading harvest going core when I heard that was going core. I'm like, this is. I think they've got a pretty decent middle ground system with it, so we'll see. But one thing which I just thought was really cool of them, the whole alpha thing. I think that's really nice because they have this whole thing of and also worth clarifying, chat, when Chris talks about like alpha being available. There's a difference between the in-house testing they do and alpha. He's not saying like they don't do any in-house testing till the day before. It's like alpha is like random plebs who've been playing the game for like 8 years. So I think it's really cool that they're having that system where it's like, look, we'll give it to you, you can test stuff, but then you can't do the racing, because that's always felt like a bit of a weird disconnect.
Yes.
A lot of people who do have access are racers, so I think that's a good system. I do worry if that might maybe impact the amount of people who actually do the testing. I mean,
it will 100%. There's going to be a lot in terms of, like, relatively speaking, to the alpha testers. There will be quite a few. Not.
Well, Tai, if you're watching, don't worry. I will alpha, so you don't need to worry about competing against me for the 3.13 race. I'm a very prolific racer. I will hang up my mantle, and I will,
your sacrifice is noted, Taiki.
Well, I'm sure some people would like us to stream forever so they can get their drops. We should probably wrap up eventually. So going into like our closing thoughts. What? Right.
Just so we're clear, the drops are available for everybody. If you don't get them now, then you can get them through other Twitch channels as well, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're streamed Path of Exile.
Any
so,
Path of Exile Twitch channel that has drops enabled.
Yeah, so don't read
Yep.
us.
don't react. Yeah, not our fault.
Again, if you don't get drops, if you message Rise
Yep.
directly, you'll get it.
Bex gave us something.
I said yesterday that I asked if we could get one unique. I asked Bex. Thank you.
Can we show it on stream though?
Oh, that looks so
Okay,
good.
community team, show this on the stream.
Good luck.
Yeah, Clarky doesn't have
Community
control.
team's freaking out.
Community team's like, one more.
Good luck, community team.
One more.
Right,
I mean,
chat. If this
I can
doesn't
read
show
it,
up
but
again,
it's-
this is the community team's fault because we don't have access to this.
It's red, chat. It's red.
Oh,
Okay,
it's
Or
got
good.
nice
Oh,
3D.
chat.
Oh,
you're
this
missing
is
out.
so crazy! It's the best one. I wish you guys could have seen this. Oh my god!
It's a game changer.
What?
It's a pretty interesting item, though. To be fair, I'll wait until they
Oh,
can
really?
see
I
it
haven't read
before
it.
The 3D art looks so good. It's so creepy.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
It's like it's
We'll
eating
wait
your
to
arm.
talk about it, but it's pretty.
No, we're
it's pretty
not. We're gonna keep talking about it while chat can't see it. It's gonna be great.
It
Okay.
looks really pretty.
It's nice. I like the Do you reckon that's animated? That weird like blood effect on it?
That would be nuts.
You know my favorite part about this? Nobody's
What?
talking about how good it is.
I haven't even read the thing yet.
Oh no, I
just
said
been
it's I said it's
out.
pretty interesting. There's a lot of damage it gives. It's a pretty big downside though.
Wait, this
I do-
stacks?
I do like how GGG's going back to making
Does it?
items with downsides.
No, it doesn't because one of them is it's conditional. One of them says if you've, and the other one says when.
Yeah.
You.
Again, we can't say what until it's on stream.
It's not
No
that
good.
good then.
Yeah.
This could be a
It's-
craise item. If that damages,
It's-
like I think.
It's the new
Interesting.
headhunter. Oh my god!
Can't wait to get this in my ritual.
Hmm.
Oh, chat. Sorry.
No, we're,
Hey, you
we're
know what's
trying.
really crazy about this Rise? You could use this item with Headhunter.
Whoa!
Oh,
That's like anything that isn't about.
That might end very fast.
well, spoilers, Octavian. Wow.
Oh, here we go. It's up.
Oh,
There you go,
guys.
Jack.
Whoop whoop.
Right.
It's pretty cool. I like the focus
Read it,
on like
someone.
damage over time stuff.
yeah.
Ziggy, go.
Okay. I'm guessing that's Quattra's Regulator, Sovereign Spike Shield. The flavor text says horrific experiments with corrupted flesh require careful management. It is a shield that, in addition to Evasion and Energy Shield, gives 41% plus to damage over time multiplier if you've dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds, 2% of life regenerated per second if you've dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds, lose 11% of energy shield when you've dealt a critical strike, and lose 13% of life when you deal a critical strike. So obviously there's a ranges, but you lose life and energy shield when you crit and gain a bunch of damage and some regen. Anything that damages you is like potentially insane for various reasons.
Yeah.
There's always like
Yeah.
mechanics that you can manipulate with that stuff.
But it does
I
say-
hate to do this. Sorry, just quickly. Community team. I think chat would really appreciate seeing the 3D art as well. So if you
Yeah,
could,
3D art.
Yes.
3D art is
pretty
the
good.
best thing about this. You could,
Right.
you could fix that again. Sorry.
Sheesh.
There's some poor.
And I thought
intern
regular
just
Baeclast-
cursing at Bex. There you go. Look at that.
Beautiful.
Wait, but now we can't see the item. Wait, revert it. Bring it back.
We can replace Riser's cam with the 3D art. It's fine.
I'd like to see it upside
Like
down. Community team. We're good. Maybe
Very
like
cool.
45 grand.
No, I think it's pretty decent though. Like overall, it's like a elemental overload in a shield with a downside. Very cool.
It is important that it says lose life because I don't think life that's lost through that kind of text counts as damage taken, so it won't be able
Yeah.
to feed passive damage taken. So
Right.
Mm.
Is that wearing one of the new supporter packs? What set is that? I think was that one of the new 2 ones? That's a cool
I
helmet.
don't think
like that a
so.
lot.
What is that?
It's a cool hat.
Yeah, I don't know what that armor is they're wearing. Looks awesome.
Hmm.
Very ritually sick.
Does lose life count as taking damage?
No.
Apparently not.
Yes! Finally, it wasn't me. Hell yeah.
That was a good rise
One
moment.
time
Mickey,
it
well
was
done.
Nuki that messed up.
What?
Yes.
What did I do?
I like
Octavian
nothing.
literally
Don't
just
worry about
described
it.
that mechanic. Yeah.
Classic. It's classic Baeclast. I love
Oh.
that the item is extremely ritual themed. Like it's a ritual item, and then the idea that you're like sacrificing your life each time you do this and gain this power is pretty awesome. Very thematic, which I enjoy.
Thank you,
Alright,
Bex.
What? Yeah, thanks, Bex. What else we got?
Thank you,
Loaded?
community team.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, so closing thoughts, everyone. What is your main takeaway from today, and what is the thing you're most excited for and you're most cautious for? Because we do like to complain on Baeclast.
I mean, most cautious heist. Most excited for. Probably the gem reworks. That's for me always like, or now reworks, but changes, I should say. And especially the vast amount of them. Always excited for that. I'm surprised that they're doing so much, seemingly, because we don't really know the changes, but they're doing so much, especially considering the how much effort was put into the alternate gem quality system. So, yeah. Looking forward to playing a lot of different builds.
So next, the whole atlas looks really, really cool, I think. Yeah. The ascendancies, actually, the ascendancies, the fact that they are so aware of not shoehorning people into one build type, going through one of the sub ascendancy classes leading into the big one is really good. Like in the occultist, so you don't ruin your build by going through one. They did that both in the occultist now. They've done it down in Deadeye, and that's just a really good change. It really allows you to be more creative with the ascendancies. I think that's great. Ritually looks great. One thing I'm worried about would be management of the Atlas. I would love to see an inventory that you can open whenever you're on the Atlas, so that you can put your stones over and like kind of matching that when you're sitting in the Atlas, because that could be a mess otherwise if you want to actively change your Atlas as you're mapping.
Yeah, because I guess we're gonna have all these like craftable watchstones. You don't want to have like this is your tab for that set and another tab for that,
and if you would like to change it on the fly and stuff like that, I think there's a bit of a problem that could arise.
Bex just said when you put a map into the map device, there'll be a pop-up which shows which stats are being applied to it by the Atlas passive trees and watchstones. That's nice.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, comfortable. Yeah.
Start. Yeah, nice.
No, who's next?
In the interest of, because I am extremely excited about the Atlas and the new gems and all that, but in the interest of saying something different that we haven't really talked about, I'm pretty darn excited to be getting some of those really fancy looking new maps and really badass looking new boss fights with the smooth POE 2 animations and all that stuff. That looks really cool. I don't know if it's the most exciting thing. Most excitement thing, yes. But it does look really, really badass. I'm happy to be getting some more bits and pieces of POE 2. As far as what I'm concerned about, I mean, I voiced it earlier on in the podcast, but I would really like it if there was some way to like do some of the lower level content over again on a reroll. Because I don't know, it's always been a bit of a thorn in my side with the Conqueror system, but I'm sure I'm still going to enjoy Echoes of the Atlas either way.
Most excited for the insertion of a lot more boss battling through the new expansion. So I think breaking up the Atlas progression with like more things in between. So like I'm in between my cycle of Conquerors, nothing's really happening. I've just hit 4 Watchstones and whatever 4 Awakening level, and not much is happening. I'm getting these awesome boss battles, and I'm doing my first 10 boss battles. So that's the thing I'm most excited for. Lots of boss fights and a new major boss. I think that's big, as well as the crafting currency drop for that. Hopefully is pretty exciting stuff. Most concerned about the ritual store that it might get tedious looking through it each time with the sheer amount of stuff in there. I like the decision of loot. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good point that it might be because we can't filter it, effectively.
That's fair. I would say I'm probably most cautious of what we talked about earlier, depending on how you unlock the ecosystem. I could see either being an amazing addition alongside Conquerors to spice that up, or I could maybe see it being frustrated if I feel like one progression system's holding back another, but that could go either way. And I would say I'm most looking forward to my guaranteed headhunter that Chris said that I'm going to get. Guaranteed headhunter
Yeah,
mirror.
same.
Outside of that, though, it would definitely be the total just Ascendancy rework, all the skill gem changes. I think it's amazing that they're doing that. I really wasn't expecting it. And just ritual itself as a league mechanic, I'm actually really looking forward to. I think it seems like one of those leagues which just like it knows what it's trying to do. It's not biting off too much, and it's like it seems like an easy like home run kind of mechanic with me. But yeah, I would like to thank GGG for this opportunity, and also thanks everyone for coming on. And yeah, cheers for watching. If you missed any of this, we'll have it up on YouTube soon. And see you all on the 15th.
Yes, this was Tarky Cat and the crew signing off.
And the crew.
I love that. Actually, go on, Chris. That's brilliant. That was so good. Anyone who missed it in the announcement, Tarky Cat and the crew. Even though Tarky Cat gets
slap
it
in the face
after Ziggy, but it's not Ziggy and the crew, Tarky and the crew. So that's the
Yeah.
Oh, also, I would just like to officially announce that every single league start from here on outwards, there'll be an official Baeclast on the Path of Exile Twitch channel.
Oh no.
I'm surprised we're still on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cut him off, cut him off.
Community team, you don't want me to start talking about politics. You don't want to like bring us down now.
I got you.